We're live. David Gould, or Di, as everyone calls you. What do you prefer, David or Di?
Well, the thing is, Di doesn't sound very professional, does it? So,
True.
from a business point of view, I've always used David Gould. But
Yeah.
once people get to know me, they all switch to Di because that's what everyone calls me. But I'm
Yeah.
not. Is it Di or David? Not normally Dave because I'm not a big fan of Dave. But the trouble is, all my children call me Dave now.
Ever thought of you as a Dave. That's so
Isn't
weird
it?
that you just said
But
that. I never thought of you as a Dave.
I'm a Di or a David. And my
Yeah.
children find it funny, so they all call me Dave. They don't call me Dad now because they know it winds me up. But yeah.
Brilliant. For those who don't know you, letting agent, been in and around the valleys for how long buying houses?
Since 1998, 99.
Oh, you've seen it all. You've seen
Yeah,
it
it's
all.
been
I
a
didn't
lot of
start
changes
till,
in that time.
I didn't see it till 2002 or 2004. Yeah, 2004, I think. So yeah. We're the same age though, aren't we?
42. Yeah, I'm 42. So
yeah,
about
the same age. We've kicked around the valley. You kicked around the valleys probably more and longer than I have, but for anyone that doesn't know you, I have so much time for you, so much time for your story. The amount you help me is unbelievable. The number of times I try and pay you, you're like, it's fine. We'll have your properties off you as management one day. I'm like, oh, I love people that play the long game. So for anyone listening to this, if you want someone who plays the long game, Di's your man, because you stick around, right? You've done your own property stuff. You've had all sorts of shenanigans, which I'm sure we'll get into at some point. You've got a lettings business, and we're now dealing with, I don't even know how to describe the last 10 years in property.
The last 2 years, never mind the last 10.
Yeah.
It's been a war zone, hasn't it? It's been a war zone.
Yeah.
For any landlord and agent. It's like you're in the barracks constantly, where you're going to get fired at next,
And do you know what the funniest thing is, though? We're in the barracks and we're in the war zone going, holy shit, what's coming next? And at the same time, I see all these property courses being sold about how to make millions overnight or in 6 months and how easy it is and how you can still do no money down and how you can do it. And I'm like, am I living in a parallel universe? Is it just me? Because I do question that because I coach people. And I'm like, is it just me? Am I like this pessimistic, miserable idiot that's like, no, that's not possible in property? And then I watch my groups buying houses and I talk to you and actually see what's happening on the ground. I'm like, what are these people talking about? It is mental.
You can't imagine, between the estate agents and the letting agency, you can't believe how often you get the phone call from the fresh off a course property investor. And there's these buzzwords that have come straight from a course.
Yeah.
And as soon as you answer the phone, you go, here we go.
Yeah.
It's another dickhead.
What are the favourites? So for those listening, so they can make sure if they phone you, they don't use these. What are your favourite liners? What do they say?
They normally start off with, I'm going to build up a portfolio of 20 houses over the next 5 years. And
at least they say 5 years, not year.
Well, even 5 years, because these people are starting off, sometimes with very little seed capital. Yeah. And they might have wasted £20,000 to £30,000 of it on a course.
Yeah.
When, if you want to learn about property, walk into your local estate agent, walk into your local letting agent, speak to other landlords. You don't need to go on these courses because we don't hold this information and keep it to ourselves. Our job is to share this knowledge because we want to show that we're knowledgeable for them to trust us. So we're not going to keep all the secrets.
Yeah.
So I still find it bonkers that these courses still exist, and there's people, especially with the internet today. You can just do a little Google search and it'll tell you everything about any subject. So, and there's so much material out there on property, and there's so many people who know the game. Financial advisors. Speak to a financial advisor; they can tell you exactly what your borrowing level can be. And yes, you can make a lot of money out of property, but it does need some seed capital at the start. And then you allow that to grow, and you can build a decent portfolio, especially if you buy some refurbishment projects. You can, if you've got, let's say, if you're fortunate enough to have £100,000 seed capital.
Yeah, it's a magic number, that, especially in Wales.
Yeah, exactly, because you can buy a decent property in, needing a bit of work. You can turn that round, get it rented, get it refinanced. But even then, you need to know, like certain mortgage companies, you can't refinance within 6 months.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there are any that will do quicker than that now.
I think
So even if you,
Kensington is it Kensington? Howard knows one that will, but like
yeah,
one. You know?
yeah, that's really they're a rarity. So you,
and
you
they've
could,
got some cool products. And again, I think they might have some criteria of, if it's your first property, forget it. You know, they want to work with experienced people who've done it before. So they go, okay, fine, you know what you're doing.
So if you're starting off, you're looking at 6 months before you can refinance and take your money back out. But to be fair, if it's a decent refurb project, from the time you complete, you're looking probably around a month or two before it's turned round. Get a tenant in there, get it up and running. You know, you're not far off then, you're starting. Then you could potentially take out, if you're fortunate, all of that £100,000 seed capital, or you might get 95 back or 90 back, you know. But that way you can take that 100,000 and you could build a decent portfolio by using that method. However, it doesn't buy you £10 million worth of property. You know, you've got to build within those means. If you just use it as typical seed capital, you're buying what, 2 or 3? And then your seed capital's gone, and yes, you'll have 3 nice properties probably, and a nice little bit of income off it. But that's a realistic idea of how you build a property portfolio.
Yeah.
The rent to rent schemes and the I've always avoided the one sort of new concept that come out and was, you know, we were having people weekly come to us. They were looking for landlords who had a portfolio, they'd had enough, wanted to get out. And what they do is they come in and they take over their portfolio for them, manage it for them with an agreed purchase price that they're not going to complete in 5 years. The landlord's still taking all the risk because they still got the mortgages, you know, and it's sort of, it was some, for some bizarre reason, it seemed like everyone wanted to do this at that time.
Well, it's what came out on all the courses, options, and lease options, and all of the rest of it.
And I just find, at the end of the day, the way property is bought and sold in the UK is quite simple. Well, say UK, Wales and England in particular, because obviously Scotland's a bit different. But if you're going to buy a property in Wales or England, until the point of exchange, you're not committed to purchase that property and they're not committed to sell. So you could manage that property portfolio for a landlord for 5 years, get a fantastic, you know, sort of bit of refurbishment done, get the rents up. You really turn the portfolio around. It's now, let's say it was worth £500,000, now it's worth £1 million. And you're expecting muggins to say, oh yeah, well, that's the deal we did. You can have it and kiss goodbye to £500,000.
Yeah.
You know, how many of those turned sour and ended up in legal battles?
I think probably far more than we'll ever know, because no one talks about when fraud goes wrong, when money goes wrong, no one talks about it. When deals go wrong, no one talks about it. When people lose money, no one talks about it. So we'll never know. And it's one of the things, I've got one group that does rent to rents, and Wayne in that group, they've done very well, and caveated with the relationships they have built. They are renting, and these aren't lease options now, these are rents, right? So they're renting off people they know really well, who trust them, who want to keep the property, don't want the hassle of Airbnb. So these guys are paying them a standard rent and they're renting on Airbnb and making the money in the middle.
Yeah,
they've had to build for years to have that trust there, that when people think, oh, I'll just walk into an agency and they'll just give me a landlord who will just hand over their property with who knows what's going to happen. It's just people have got relationships.
Yes, we've got a couple of rent to rents. I don't put them in the same category as the sort of lease options. Because the rent to rent, you could sign up a year contract. You know, it's just like a corporate tenancy agreement, basically, isn't it? Rather than it's like a corporate lease rather than a residential lease. So there's clear structure and guidance, and there's clear infrastructure around that, where this is how it's done and this is how it works. And we've got one down Cardiff Bay that's been running really, really well. The guys who are running it as an Airbnb have done really well of it. The landlord is really content because he's got no maintenance issues.
It's brilliant for landlords, right? No maintenance. The property's immaculate all the time. No issues with getting rid of people. You know, I mean, unless you have
no need for a letting agent. So I
Well,
shouldn't say
yeah, I
that.
guess so. Yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, although I think one of the guys that Wayne's working with is a letting agent down in Swansea, and he still has a certain amount of involvement on behalf of the landlord, so he kind of does help out with maintenance and stuff. So, but yeah, in the main, I guess you guys get cut out, don't you? Because
it's
not
essentially
needed.
a tenant find only, isn't it? You know,
Yeah,
it's that sort of for landlords who only use us for that service. It makes no difference to us whatsoever. And generally, our stance is we always try and find long-standing tenants for properties, because, to be frank, tenant find only deals are costing us money at the moment.
Yeah,
they're you've got to do it. You can't not do it, because if you're not doing the tenant find process, you're not advertising property, so you're not active, so you're not seen to be active. So you have to do them. And essentially lost leaders.
Yeah.
Before
I'm one of those landlords that works with you in that way, right? And the reason I do is because I'm like, I can't remember what you charge, because we've had tenants forever in all our houses.
I can't remember. When's the last time we did a tenant find for you?
Years?
Before the pandemic.
Yeah, Bands Club Muse, I think it was.
God, yeah, so
she's 3 years.
But if you work on finding long-term tenants, a lot of agents fall in, and I see it all the time. I see it, people talking about Facebook. Oh, we let this property in the first viewing. For me, that's like, what are you doing? Because if you just take the first person that comes through the door, what about the other? Because we're getting 250 applicants on most properties at the moment.
Really? That's nuts, isn't it? I remember you saying about a year ago that you used to have in your area about 30 or 40 properties, and I think you had 4 at that time when we spoke. Is that still the same?
We're getting closer to about 10 now. But when we've got 10 properties available, honestly, it is just carnage, because not only you get north of 200 emails through Move on the Market, etc., we're also getting an awful lot through our own website now. I think a lot of people, because they're so desperate for houses, they're now starting to go round to each agent and contact them all direct.
Like the good old days before the internet.
Yeah, it's crazy. And people come into the office, say, can I put my name down for any properties? And I genuinely say, look, if I tell you, take your name down, pretend they're going to call you, I'm just being disingenuous, because we've just got about enough time to handle all the inquiries coming through, sift through them, book the viewings. Every property is like a full day viewings now. We're there 10 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night. And we'd have maybe 25, 30 people going to view a property. And from that, you might have a list of 10 or 12 people to put to the landlord.
Pick one.
But that's by doing that. And we've always done it that way, even pre-pandemic. But we used to have maybe a block viewing of 8 or 10, something like that, maximum. But now it's a full day, and you're brutal sometimes with some landlords, as you know, won't accept pets. Some landlords won't accept benefits. Each landlord's got a different prerequisite what they're looking for. We try and, although pets generally can be a problem, the vast majority are not. But the
I've
trouble
got
is,
loads of pets in my houses. I've got, several, because I'm like, I've got dogs. I know how important they are to the family and to the kids. Can you imagine if you had to go rent and you've got a dog and you've got to say to your kids, sorry, the dog's got to go. I couldn't do that to a family. But I get why landlords don't want them. But
it takes one, doesn't it? It takes one bad experience or one bad pet.
Well, I did. Do you know, I had one. I think they were 2 or 3. It was in Combe Park in Talis Street. It was years ago. And I think they were 3 siblings, and they were like 18 to 25, issues at home with their parents. They ended up renting on their own, and they had 2 cats, and the cats fucking trashed the place. Like, they never emptied the cat litter trays. The house stank of wee. Like, it was pretty bad. So I get why landlords just go, right, that's it. But
and you can't generalize. But if you look, the problems you get with cats tend to be scratching wallpaper, scratching posts.
So much money.
So and carpets as well. They might scratch at the corner of carpets, because you watch a cat walking around. They sharpen their nails all the time. It's they're hunters at the end of the day. And so they're all borderline feral, most cats, aren't they?
Speaking as an ex-cat owner, absolutely. Meg was a flipping wild animal in my house. She used to bring mice every night and all sorts.
And they'll pick and choose when they come home to see you as well.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of problems you get generally with cats. Then with dogs, you can get sometimes a bit of chewing on skirting boards or scratching on doorways. If they're normally locked in the kitchen overnight, they might be scratching at the door to try and get out, basically. Scratching at the back door, glass and the panels and stuff that they're trying to tell their owner they want to come in. Or smell sometimes. With dogs, you can have, with dogs and cats, you can have a smell. But most of those things can be resolved, well within the bond. Lots of pet owners are prepared to pay an extra bond. And, in most circumstances, if the bond doesn't cover the damage, then it's only a small claims application. And if they've got good salaries and things like that, they're going to pay it anyway. They're not going to go to small claims because they don't want CCJs. I think with it's obviously not unreasonable what you're charging them, and you just want the house to come back to what it was like before. But it takes one bad pet owner to rent a house from a landlord. That landlord then will go forevermore, no pets. And it's unfair.
Well, especially now when, as landlords, we can effectively have the pick of the bunch, and it's hard for the tenants, but it's kind of like, it's a bit like going for a job interview, isn't it? It's like, who's the best candidate?
Yeah. And this whole, woke bullshit about you can't discriminate, you can't do this, you can't do that. At the end of the day, it's not discrimination. It's just there's somebody better for it. So we're not saying none of you can have it. What we're saying is there's 25 people who want to view this property, don't have pets and are all working. We can only show so many people that property. As I said earlier, it's costing us money. If you've got a member of staff at the property all day and all the hours it takes to book the viewings in, then the reference check
in Wales are what, between £500 and £1,000. So you're getting paid £300 to £600 tops. Most of the houses, I mean, it's going a bit higher now, but in the past it would have been what, £400-500 is an average rent.
Exactly, yeah. So
half of that.
And obviously the tenant fees are gone. The government, in their internal wisdom, banned those. Apparently, over 60, I looked through when they did the report on that. Apparently, it's like 60 odd or 70% of agents voted in favour of a fee ban. That's like turkeys voting in their droves for Christmas. I thought they're talking absolute
Was
crap.
that because they went and found like 10 agents, 6 of who were, I don't know, resentful and leaving the business, and got them to vent in their way and made it 60 or 70%?
Well, it was an open questionnaire. I filled it in. I fill them all in, and I was in favour of controls because we always had a very clear structure. Up to £500, it was 150. Over £500, it was 200. Corporate agreements were 250. So we weren't we were charging for really what the work was. So when the complete ban came in, it wasn't catastrophic for us because we weren't charging ridiculous fees anyway. But some of the corporates were charging nearly a month's rent in fees. It was like £400 and stuff like that. And I'm going, that's obscene, especially I know how they work and what they do for that. And I'm just like, you're taking the mick there. And that's why these things come in then, because people are pushing it too far. So yes, I wasn't in favour of a fee ban, but they probably put me into that category. I was in favour of a control on it, making it like now it's a maximum of a week's rent is the deposit you can take.
Exactly. Yeah.
Your fee can only be a week's rent. Great, but actually banning it altogether, what happens then is these agents who are then. It's not as if all letting agents walking around South Wales are multi-millionaires driving Bentleys. We've built this business up. It's nearly 20 years now we've been building letting agency up. We look after 700 properties. Yeah, it's a successful business.
Yeah, but look what it's taken to get here. Jesus.
Yeah. And we haven't got the expenses benefits that these politicians have got to make these decisions. And we certainly don't get anywhere near this, 70, 80 grand a year salary that they've got. And that's a alleged successful business that has been going 20 years. So and then you've got the fees that they chucking on us now. License fees £5,000 every 5 years. So while hitting you with big fees and hitting you with a lot more red tape to go through, which again costs money, every layer of bureaucracy that they throw at us, it costs money to deal with those things. Electrical certs coming in. I know as you know, we've always asked for electrical certs because it comes under the Provision of Goods and Services Act rather than the Housing Act. Now it specifically comes into the Housing Act. Now all of a sudden everyone's getting on board with it. But thankfully, the vast majority of our properties have got electric certs. But now all of a sudden they decided in their eternal wisdom they need mains wired smoke alarms. Well, and I know from a point of view, we're thinking, well, if they're plugged in and they're mains wired, they're going to be more reliable. Well, that's really not the case, because if you've got mains wired smoke alarms, they have these little things called backup batteries in them. And when those smoke alarms start beeping, do you know what happens?
People take them off.
Tenants pull the smoke alarm down and pull the battery out because they're fed up with the beeping. Because a lot of them don't know there's a backup battery and they think it's just faulty because it's plugged into the mains. So there are smoke alarms out there that have got 10-year guarantees. Battery operated ones. What are they? 18 quid from Screwfix, 20 quid, something like that. Whack one of those on each floor. And then, when they start beeping, you take it down and whack another one up. It's far more sensible, far cheaper. They
don't get damaged, because the issue is as well, when people try and take them down, they're often a little bit tricky to get down, so they get broken off, and then you've got to, instead of just changing a battery, you've got to refit the whole thing, rather than, like you said, the 18 quid one, up it goes. Job done.
And it's guaranteed for 10 years. And, we check the use by date now, or the life, because a lot of the smoke alarms have got a little sticker on them telling when they expire.
Yeah, we had a cheeky electrician fit some in ours in my holiday let in Porthcawl, and they were already 4 years old. So actually, they started failing after like 4 or 5 years, rather than going. And when we took them down, we were like, oh, hang on, these weren't fitted, 9 years ago.
But that's the thing. If they're a battery one and they're straight off a box, it would have been. I'm all for things like smoke alarms and stuff. It's an important part of. Even though it hasn't been a legal requirement in rental houses for a long time, we've always insisted at least one smoke alarm on the top floor, landing. That's what we've always insisted on, and we always check them.
Compliance isn't such a big deal for your landlords, because you've already. I think that's the thing that people say to me that are coming in new. They're like, "Oh yeah, but what about all the compliance?" I'm like, I was doing it anyway. Like, I was running my business properly. The only reason there's compliance is because there are slumlords out there who rent out dire places that are probably going to kill someone. So we've all got to get legislated. Actually, we're already running our business fine. All right, it's paperwork and it's a bit of a pain, and Rent Smart Wales doing all the registration, all the rest of it. But actually, if you're running your business properly anyway, compliance isn't that big a deal, really.
But sometimes you're like Legionella. Now,
don't.
if you've got a cold water tank or a hot water tank in the loft of a property, you need to take precautions with that. 100%, because it's the breeding ground for all sorts of problems. Not forgetting any vermin that could fall into the tank and things like that. So those things got to be checked and looked after. But there's such a rarity now. The vast majority are sealed central heating systems or combi boilers.
Yeah.
I mean, the only risk you've got of catching Legionella in a property like that is if you've had stagnant water in a shower head for an awful long time. I'd like to think, most people are showers running at least once a day in every home, which is not going to be stagnant for long then, is it? And the hose pipe in the garden. Now, if you went out and run a hose pipe in the garden and drunk the water straight out that hose pipe, this is why Darwin comes in, you shouldn't be surviving very long on this planet if you think that's a sensible way to drink water, It's like the health and safety stuff is, yes, we want health and safety, we want everyone to be safe, but sometimes if people are being really stupid, you can't legislate for all that stuff, can you?
We're trying, but really you can't, because it just makes it an absolute nightmare for everyone.
Because then you're dealing with stuff that you go, of course I'm not really going to drink the water out of the hose pipe anyway, when I can just pop into the house and have a drink. Why would you be drinking out of the hose pipe in the garden?
It's like insurance for this house, right? So I spoke to Steve from Westmore. Shout out to Steve if you're listening. And I said, we said, can we have house insurance? I said, but, I do have workshops, 3 workshops in this room with my workshop clients, and then we're going to do annually a couple of bigger like gatherings. So he comes back, he went, it's going to add 1,500 onto the insurance. The insurance for this house per year is 500. So for me to have clients coming onto my business premises, he was like, yeah, but if something happens, I'm like, what? I mean, I like to think that my clients aren't going to sue me if they're an idiot and, you know, like hurt themselves. He was like, yeah, but you have to insure for it. You have to insure for someone trips over the front door step coming in, has a spinal injury, and is incapacitated for life. And I was like, what? And that's going to be my fault? And he was like, basically in insurance terms, yes. So it was
It's a step.
£1,500.
It's a step. It's a step.
He said that's the level now of insurance claims for like the dumbest stuff that now. So for me to have 3 days of the month for 6 hours each, to have 3 different client groups that come to me every month and have done for ages, and for once or twice a year to have 30 or 40 people here, which is effectively a social, but you know, a kind of workshopy type social, £1,500.
You're better off going to a local pub or a local hotel.
I did say that. I was like, I'm sure I could hire business premises for less.
Yeah, exactly. It's, you know, and cover the bar bill.
Yeah. So, you know, just have people in the house for 6 hours. It worked out as, what was it? It was it's basically 130 quid a month insurance. So each group for 6 hours is like 40 quid insurance to have 3 or 4 people walk through that door. It's just like,
it's
really?
just, yeah.
But if I don't do it, I void the house insurance. And because the house is the value that it is, and because the rebuild cost, I mean, they've put the rebuild cost, I think, way too low because of the age of the house and everything it would need. Because of that, if I don't do it, I avoid the insurance. So it's literally, you got to suck it up and do it. Yeah. But that's where it goes, right? And it's just madness.
Yeah, same with everything, isn't it? That's we're just constantly getting sort of hit with changes in legislation. You know, you look over the last 10 years in particular, it's been an assault on landlords, and obviously as agents we're caught in the crossfire and that. But I'm struggling to find the rationale behind it all, because there's when you're bringing in controls and you're bringing in things that are for the benefit of the tenants, extra health and safety, extra protections. That's what we've
been told, right? It's all for the benefit of the tenants, and yet look at the unintended consequence of all of it. Who's paying for it?
Yeah, exactly. Because landlords' costs going up, and I'm getting phone calls constantly from landlords. Whereas, you know, we do rent reviews every sort of 12 to 18 months, and when you're in quite a stable market, those rents might not move for a couple of years.
I've got my rents up for years, literally years. I mean, Carn Street, they moved in. I think Jared said he's been there 8 years now. I've never put his rent up.
But you think, start of the pandemic, the vast majority of properties in the Rhondda Valley, and Rhondda Valley is sort of, all the valleys are very similar, aren't they? Yeah, you know, from a value point of view.
Yeah.
We were looking at anything between £400 and £500 for a rental property in the market.
2 or 3 bed terrace.
2 or 3 bed in that terrace, in that sort of price bracket.
Yeah.
If it was in a really good area and a really good property in really good order, you might squeeze it to 550.
Yeah.
Now everything is 500 to 600, but the vast majority north of £600. So when you're talking of maximum of 500, you're talking 20 to 30% increase in rent in a year and a half. Year and a half, 2 years. Whereas we should have expected maybe going up 25, 50 quid, something like that. You know, and you're talking an extra 200 quid a month on most properties.
Yeah.
The only reason it's happened is quite simply supply and demand.
Yeah.
And they've, with the stamp duty, because in Wales, well, I say stamp duty, it's land transaction tax, they call it in Wales now, isn't it? Yeah. So it's land transaction tax. It's now 4% on any second homes.
Plus now, 4% as well, right? It's 4% on top of 4%. What it should be.
Yeah, from the first penny, it's 4%. And then obviously once you're up over 180,000, then it jumps massively again, doesn't it? But generally, we're talking more the valley areas, and that's where they tend to be nowhere near the 180,000. Yeah. So they brought that in, which creates a barrier to entry for new landlords to buy.
Yeah.
Whilst they got So you've got Welsh Assembly government doing that. Then you've got Westminster who are attacking everyone on the Section 24 tax grab, which is, which has hammered a lot of
Cost me
landlords'
150 grand, that did.
Yeah, and
Easy taxes to put all of my properties into a limited company.
Yeah, exactly. So, like a lot of new landlords are buying now, are doing it through limited companies from the start. Especially if their goal is to build a substantial portfolio, it's if you're going to do that, then and you're going to gear your portfolio, you've got to be in a limited company. It's foolish otherwise. I know you lose some tax breaks by being in a limited company.
Well, and you have a higher interest rate with a mortgage, and you've got accountancy fees. So you've got to do it properly, right? You can't do it for one or two properties. It's not worth it anymore for Mrs. Jones to supplement her income or her pension with one rental.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that again adds an extra layer of costs and an extra layer of work. And if you're spending time dealing with things, then that's got to be equal money. So all these things, landlords need the higher rent as well to cover all this extra fitting mains, wired smoke alarms. All the different things that landlords need to now do, whether it's registered rent, Smart Wales, have it, all these different insurances and all these different systems and processes in place. Gone are the days where you could buy a rental house and just pop and see it every couple of months and it'd be no headache. It's a constant headache, especially when you're under the threat of, if for any reason that property becomes in the guise of some health and safety person or somebody from the council that is now uninhabitable, or you've got damp problems or anything at all that makes that property substandard, all of a sudden you legally can't charge rent for it. Properties get problems from time to time, especially when they're 120-year-old properties. If you was an agent or landlord, you were dealing with that repair as quickly as possible. Sometimes, especially with everyone being so busy, it can take a couple of weeks for a contractor to get there, book in the work, give the quote and everything else. But all of a sudden, that's dead time now and it'd be no difference if you had the problem in your house as if you've got a problem in a rental house.
Well, and there's another layer as well, because actually you've got to deal with the tenant's availability to allow someone into the house, which also then causes, delays in time.
And if they're having free rent because you can't complete the work, how quick are they going to allow you into that property? And legally, you can't force your way into a tenant's house, quite rightly so. But there's lots of little areas now that are going to cause landlords and agents far greater problems. And so these are all creating barriers to entry for new landlords to enter the market. And I know the 4% land transaction tax, they brought that in to attack one specific area in Wales, which was all the coastal towns that were getting overrun by second home owners. We're using them as holiday lets and or just using them as a second holiday home, spending some time in the summer there and then even empty the rest of the year. So their focus was trying to solve that problem. But by having a blanket approach over the whole of South Wales, it's had even more detrimental effect in places like the valleys and the M4 corridor and other areas where there's, high prevalence of, sort of buy-to-let landlords renting the private rental sector. So you sometimes they're making these decisions in their Houses of Parliament or in the Welsh Assembly, and I sometimes think, what expertise are they actually leaning on? Because if they're just looking at straightforward data and facts and figures and making decisions without speaking to industry experts, like if they asked me, do you think this is a good idea, this 4% land transaction tax? I said, no, it's ridiculous. I said, you're already driving landlords out of the property industry, and then you're creating a big barrier for others to come back in. Just, we're already running low on stock. We're already struggling in some areas to have enough properties. The council, you can't get a council house for love nor money because they're just not building anywhere near the amount they need.
Well, they sold them all off, or a lot of them.
But now they're coming back in the droves, aren't they? But they're all called housing associations now, which is basically private companies buying up properties, renting to the council. It's council houses done by the private sector. That's what it is. You dress it up any way you want, but that's fundamentally what it's doing.
Yeah.
And the trouble is with that, in the 70s, specifically in South Wales, you had these council estates popping up everywhere. I come from a place called Beddau, and there's a big council estate there, and all the local villages around us all had their own big council estate built. So, and I don't want this to come across derogatory in any way, but when you put people of a certain ilk all in one place, especially in like there's estates around by me that the vast majority of our area where I live now is really nice, but there's one in particular that's absolutely dreadful. And basically, the only people they put there are the lower echelons of society. So those people are having children, and those children are growing up in that environment. They know no different. The concept of having social houses built on every housing estate, where these people, the people who've maybe parents don't work, or there's drug problems, alcohol problems, all of those dreadful things that some children have to suffer growing up in South Wales. If those children are only seeing other children with parents that is very similar, they don't see anything different. But
they don't know what's available, because expectations are so low.
If they were in another estate amongst other people, yes, some people are. There's not value, isn't it? People don't want to be living next to a housing association because they go, I don't want to be. I'm paying 400 grand for my house. I don't want to be near a housing association. That's fine for people to have that sort of opinion, because those children might pull some children down a little bit, but the vast majority of that estate is going to have the opposite effect, and it's going to pull those children up, and they're going to see, well, hang on a second, if you get a good job, you drive a nice car, you go on holidays, you live in a nice house, it's giving people a view of what else is available.
Yeah,
you're far more likely to fall into crime and fall into drug taking if you're living in an estate that's full of crime and drug taking. Because what do you aspire to be? The best drug dealer on the estate?
Yeah.
Well,
and
health and safety guys here.
You're doing your compliance, Di.
But it's like especially for today.
Yeah. We don't deal with as a society as well that there are people that don't want that in their backyard. We don't. It's such a missing. And we go, oh, why are we at war? Why is Putin and Ukraine at war? And we're like, well, and I would argue, why are we at war with Russia? Because this idea that we're not at war is just
by proxy. By proxy.
Like, oh, it's by proxy, so we're not really at war. I'm like, if that's not war, I don't know what is. And then, so we don't deal with on an individual community level. That's what happens. That's why people are at war, because we won't live together. We won't deal with everything that there is in society. We don't want to deal with people who have got addictions and problems and haven't had the best childhood. We want to go, oh, we'll put those people over there. And it's like, what the fuck is that? Where's the community? Where's the let's all take care of each other and help out? What, it's a very funny thing. It's like, not in my backyard.
NIMBYs, yeah.
But at the same time, philanthropy, and we all need to get on and we need to build community. It's like, well, the way you build community is it involves everyone, not just the people you like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
because
massive.
they've forgotten generations, and we're going back down the same route now. We're building these council estates, housing association are building these small estates, some of them 40, 50 houses or whatever. But the only people who are going in there, they're not open to the private rental sector. They're only open to people who are getting properties through the normal council housing crisis, being evicted. And so you've got to be in a certain cycle to get one. Now, that's not the case for everyone in there, but unfortunately, the ones
for most people
are the better, I'm going to start being brutal, but the better quality people in that estate, then it's not fair on them either, because they're getting shoved in an area where the vast majority are going to be problem tenants, people who don't really pay, people who are kicking off. There's drug problems, alcohol problems, all of those. But it's not fair on those people who've fallen into a trap and fallen into a hole, or unable to work. They could be disabled. They could be elderly. There's lots of reasons why you'd be looking for a council house. It's not fair on them to be dumped in these places either. With the people that have been put around them, they've got the right to a quiet life. And why can't they live in your Miskins or your Llantrisant or, your Llandaff North or your, some of the really nice places in and around Cardiff? It's like if they've got to be shoved in these little boxes, or when you lot go over there out of the way. That's, for me, all you're doing
Yeah.
It's an intergenerational thing then, isn't it? You're not breaking that
Cycle.
that cycle between parents and children, and not giving. And it's the children who are completely innocent, and those parents are probably completely innocent children at one point. They could have been brought up in a council house in the
Yeah.
70s.
Typical, isn't it? Yeah.
Most people in Wales, like I'm one included. I was brought up in a damp council house in South Wales. There's not a lot of people that would have some sort of interaction with council
Yeah,
houses
it's
and stuff like
only,
that.
we only got to go back, I mean, I wasn't born in Wales, right? My husband was, his grandfather brought up on a council estate.
Yeah.
You've only got to go back 2 generations
Yeah.
at most from our generation to go, oh, actually, like we live in Newport, but we're next to Cwmbran. And I've heard people tell stories about how they came down from the valleys on foot and came across this town of Cwmbran that had been bought, and how it had been built, specifically for, like, this is the next generation of housing and how we do towns and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
That's not that long ago. Cwmbran's only 50 years old, I think.
Yeah. So some of the estates, some of the larger ones are they're notorious in South Wales. You talk about the Gurnos estate, you talk about Penrys. People who've lived in South Wales know these places. Caerfadra over in Llanbedfadra. There's parts of Caerfadra is starting to get better. Like most of the council estates, like the Hendy in Pontyclun, you've got one in Talbot Green here, you've got big swathes of Beidar that used to be council houses. You've got one over in Tonteg, opposite where the police station used to be. They're ex-local authority houses, but where they've been bought from, like the right to buy, etc. Those estates now are quite nice and well established, but they're nice and quite well established because most of the people there own their own homes. So, or they might have been council houses to start with, but there's just a normal housing estate now. But so they're taking then these lovely new shiny housing estates, plonking them up everywhere, and they're just repeating the same experiment that didn't work in the 70s and created problems in the 70s. Like the one next to the rugby club. The police are back and forth there all the time. Lovely, shiny new estate. Non-stop arguments, kicking off in the street, problems up there continuously. Those cheeky sods are to complain about noise from the rugby club.
The irony.
I just, sometimes you just look at situations and go, are you for real? And again, it comes back to these people making these decisions up on high. It's like when they decided that people on benefits should have their rent paid direct to them because they need to learn to handle their money, which instantly meant that the vast majority of landlords were in 2 months' rent arrears. Because
I had tenants phoning me up saying, I don't want the money. I want it to come to you because then I know the rent's paid and I know what money I've got left to live on.
It's not my money.
Which they knew that they weren't great at managing money. So it was kind of worked that it came to landlords and then they had what there was to live on.
I know some tenants who went to the doctors, drunk a little bit of like whiskey or short before they went into the doctors. So they went in smelling of alcohol to tell the doctor, look, I'm an alcoholic, I can't manage my money. Can you give me a letter so the council will pay direct? The tenants literally doing that. That's how much they didn't want the money direct to them.
Well, the irony about making the tenants have the money, that wasn't choice. That was actually worse than the way it was before, because we removed choice from people about how they would like their benefits paid and where would they like them sent. That was actually empowered, saying, no, you must have it this way. Under the banner of choice and we're going to help you grow was the biggest load of bullshit ever. Because it wasn't choice. It was like, no, we're going to make you do it this way, even though you don't want it. We know better than you. You must manage your money this way. And they're like, no, I don't want to manage my money this way. I like it that way.
But the irony is that it actually worked out better for us as landlords and agents, because what we did then is we put, if you're on benefits, because we can't guarantee the vast majority of the money comes through the council, if you're on benefits, you need a homeowner as a guarantor, which gives a landlord and an agent far greater protection on the income. So the private rental sector or any private industry, you bring out new legislation, we're going to adapt to it. We're going to adapt our business. We're going to adapt the way we do things to maintain some level of security and maintain the status quo as best we can. So what that did then is you had these big swathes of people who were on benefits that used to be able to rent houses before. All of a sudden, if they didn't have somebody who was a homeowner who would put their life on the line, essentially, isn't it? Like, well, I'm going to sign that I'll cover your rent if you don't pay.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people who do that for family members, even, never mind people they don't know. So all of a sudden you've got these benefit tenants now who can't get houses because of a rule change that the government made that they didn't want in the first place.
Yeah.
Because when it was just a top up that you had to chase, it was 20 quid here, 15 quid there. That's not going to lead to people being evicted. When it's the full £450 rent and they don't pay it for 2 months, there's only one way that's going to go, Section 8, and out they go. So, it was just, it just defies logic sometimes, doesn't it? Defies logic. And
well, it's unintended consequence, isn't it? It's like, we're going to do this because we think this. And it's like no one stopped and asked the question, and the literal question, what are the unintended consequences of this going to be?
Yeah.
Just doesn't get it. Well, it feels like it's not asked. I mean,
because I don't think they ask the right people. They're probably looking at statisticians and people who look at data and number crunchers, and they go, like, they say, oh, well, we put these changes in. It's happening in Scotland. Rents didn't really go up when we made these changes. But you can't just look at one of these changes in isolation, because every one of them is just adding that extra layer of red tape and that extra level of bureaucracy, an extra layer of costs to landlords. So if landlords' costs are going up, the rent has to go up. They're not going to rent houses and lose money. They're in it.
Or they leave the market, right? They're either going to
leave the market.
They're going to leave the market, or rent's going to go up. And that is basic economic private business. It's as basic as it gets. It's not even like, I left school at 15 and I know this. Like, it's not, I didn't go to uni and do higher math to figure this out. It's like, surely that's a bit obvious. If you make it harder, people are going to either prices go up or they stop doing it.
But I don't, at some point, landlords become, they're not even second-class citizens in the UK. They've got such sort of little respect from every facet of society.
Oh, we're villains, Di. We're absolute villains.
Yeah, no, and but not only that, it's like they do things to landlords that they wouldn't dream of doing to anybody else. Like, look at Sturgeon, what she's just done in Scotland. Ban rental increases and no evictions till March next year because of the gas and petrol's gone up. For the gas and petrol. And all that. Those people, those landlords, they're paying more for gas and electric as well. They're people, like. Why are they like, sod the landlords? Don't worry about them. Don't worry about them paying their gas bill. Don't manage about them paying their mortgages and everything else, and whether they can keep their portfolio or not. They could have a landlord with 10 houses that's going to go bankrupt because of all this shit, because tenants can't be evicted for 6 months. They could go, well, I'm not paying rent. I want a good Christmas, and I want my central heating on. I want lots of presents for the kids. I can't do anything anyway. And when it comes to next March and you kick me out, I'll go just find another house to rent. You're like, these people, these landlords, the vast majority of them are providing a service to society that the government has failed to do and continues to fail to do. Yes, they're making money off it, but that's economics for you. You don't do things unless you're making money. And they keep on bringing all these things in that are making more and more difficult, and they're alienating landlords by the droves. I got to be honest, I'm amazed that there's still landlords buying properties at the moment. And we've, through the three estate agents, I've been surprised with the rental stock we've been putting up for sale. How many are still coming in to buy them? And we're talking landlords buying 5, 6s and things like that, and building a little portfolio up over a number of years. Because I genuinely thought when all these rules are coming in, the Section 21, well, if they abolish the Section 21, kiss goodbye to the private rental sector. Would you stay in? Would you stay in if they abolish the Section 21?
I mean, I think for me, because all my tenants are so long term and I've got such good relationships, I probably would. And, what's it going to take for then stuff to happen? I mean, I think there's two ways to look at it, right? So because I have good relationships with my tenants, like really good, like I actually give a shit about them. And I think there's a small minority of landlords and a small minority of tenants who give both sides of the story a really bad name. But I think most people, all the landlords I know, they genuinely care about their tenants, and the tenants generally care about us, and we have a really great relationship, at which point Section 21 is kind of not needed because that's there. And it's almost like when I get my JV groups to do a shareholders agreement, I say, look, if we ever have to rely on this, we're all fucked. Because if we have to rely on this shareholders document that tells us how to talk to each other, I've failed as a coach, you guys have failed as people and in your communication. And if we've got to use it, we will. And the courts will do what it'll do. And the company will be split up and a judge will say, da, da, da. But I think it's a massive failure to have to rely on that safety net. And it's important to have it there. And I kind of view Section 21 like that. And at the same time, it does make it harder. It does make me seriously consider what properties I do. I haven't bought for a couple of years because Owen's been, he's done all the flats that he got from you guys and other bits and pieces. We've done house renovations. I've been having kids, so I haven't bought. Am I enthusiastic about buying more single lets? No. If one gets handed to me on a plate, will I buy it? Probably not. If I can do a big renovation or an HMO or a holiday let, sure. But it's a different ball game, right? Because people leave HMOs if they're not happy. Whereas a single let, everything that it's really hard to get rid of people. But I think it's prohibitive. I think it's prohibitive to lots of people who don't have good relationships and who don't speak to their tenants.
I think at the moment, an exit strategy isn't even in your mind, is it?
No, I mean, I made the decision. I made the decision to stay. I mean, if I'm going to so what happened to me was I spent best part of 150 grand. I say I spent. Luckily, I didn't leverage my portfolio up to the max. So I had it in the portfolio that in 2018, I could basically move everything into a limited company, and I paid the stamp duty. And albeit I got a bit of relief because it was multiple properties, I paid one mortgage arrangement fee for 8 properties. Just the arrangement fee was £18,000 to refinance with a company with Aldermore. I was already with Aldermore, same houses, same tenants, same everything. So to literally change the name from Alex Louise Thomas to ABN Assets, they charged me 18 grand, plus, the stamp duty, the fees, the solicitor's fees. So both sides solicitor's fees, sale and purchase, because for those that are listening that don't really understand what we're talking about, that's basically what we all had to do, right? That was 5 years ago. I have only just this year had a conversation with my accountant about there might be a bit of corporation tax payable because I'm only just now. So people who are like, oh, look at you with your nearly £2 million portfolio and, you must be loaded. I haven't taken anything out of my property company for over 5 years. And I'm like, people think we're rich. Have I done well? Sure. Have I got a brilliant pension pot? Yes. But fuck me. And most landlords
you have to be on the sideline of what you've done. You've made your money in other areas, and you've had to have other jobs and do other projects and be involved in other stuff.
Our own property renovation. I've got holiday let. All the rest of it that's outside of it. And I think that's what people don't realize, that property is a business. This funny thing happens with property where they go, oh, housing, that's a human right. And I'm like, well, I don't see lions walking around the desert saying that housing is an animal right. Like, I don't believe we actually have any rights on this planet. I think, it's a nice to have and everyone needs it, but it's not like there's no magic God that just gives out housing. It's like, for housing to exist, there's so many of us have to run private businesses, the building contractors in the first place to build the damn things, the agents like yourself to rent them, all the rest of it. It's like, the minute someone goes, it's a right to have housing, you shouldn't make money from it. I'm like, I haven't made money for the last 5 years. So does that make you happy? But I made that choice 5 years ago to stay in. And one of the conversations was, is it time to call it a day? The problem was, at that point, if I called it a day, I'd have basically walked away with 10 years of hard graft and nothing.
Nothing.
To sell everything off, I'd have basically been, net zero. Even now, the actual equity in my property company, it's like 20 grand. That's how long it's going to take, a decade to recover from that. So I made a very conscious choice to stick in no matter what, because I believe it's important. And I made a promise to my tenants. I said, you can move into this house, which is mine. You make it your home. And as long as you abide, as long as you pay the rent and look after the house, you can live there for as long as you want. Because I wanted to give my tenants the reassurance that no matter what happened, unless, I don't know, I died and my family had to sell the portfolio, and I had an insurance policy that would pay off all the mortgages should die. So it would still actually probably keep them in their homes. I'd made a promise to those human beings that I would, no matter what, I would, that's their home. And I wouldn't take it away from them. And
that's the thing. That's the thing, Siaz, because you're committed to that, to property and to your portfolio and everything else for life, essentially. You've made that commitment. I'm going to stick in this long term. But that's a real rarity. The vast majority of landlords have got properties because it's going to be their pension pot. They've got properties because they're accidental landlords. Now, if you think
it's my pension pot too, right? But sure.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But I mean, they're specifically pension age, sell them off, live off the money. They literally don't want to be landlords past retirement. So there's the vast. I'd probably say the vast majority of landlords, the ones I deal with, even some with over 20 properties, 20 units they rent out. Literally, they're saying. I had this conversation when they were talking about banning Section 21 and everything else. And they say, well, if they ban that, what am I going to do? I said, well, you're going to have to kick all your tenants out and sell all your homes. Because otherwise, the only option you've got in the future is to sell that investment property to another investor. Now, we do a lot of that with 3EA. We sell properties with sitting tenants. The beauty of it is
with Owen, right? That's with the flats in Pontyclean.
Yeah, exactly. So the benefit is that those people who own those properties, the landlords who are selling, they get rent right up until completion. So that can sometimes be worth between 5 and 10 grand. Not having a property empty for 9 months, 10 months, or whatever. And they might have to give away, I don't know, 10 to 15 grand discount to get an investor to buy.
Yeah. Or spend money and do it up, which again they'll see back, but they'll only cover costs. They won't make any profit. It'll just mean they sell it like as a private home rather than as a rental.
Yeah, and it's a complete risk-free sale, isn't it? Because when you put that property up for sale, if it doesn't sell, because we always explain to tenants, look, this is only available to investors, and they can call up, they can dummy call us, get friends and family to call us, they can email us. We always say only open to investors at the moment. Sorry. And you've got to stick to that, because you can't tell the tenant you're doing that and then try and sell it on the open market. You can't. You have to be morally corrupt to do that as an agent. And B, that is a terrible way for that tenant to be sat there thinking they can stay long term, and all of a sudden the rug gets pulled out for them at 2 months' notice. So we make as you do with your tenants, we promise them, look, this is only open to investors. If that changes in the future, we'll tell you. But at the moment, it's only open to investors.
Yeah, and they're still petrified, because even when I sold my own properties into my own company, and I told them what I was doing. I said, look, I'm in there for the long run. Don't worry. Some of them afterwards, they said, we were sure you were selling. We thought you were lying to us just to keep us there.
Isn't that sad?
Because, of course, there were valuers going in to revalue the new mortgage, even though it was the same mortgage company and the same property. They still had to, formally send in the valuers. And half my tenants didn't believe me.
Yeah.
So even when I say it to people, they're like, "Oh, you're just saying that to, to be nice, basically."
Yeah, yeah. And it's a rarity, isn't it? Because you go out of your way to be nice to people, but even though you do that, they're still expecting you to not be a man of your word and not do what you say.
That's the societal kind of
landlords.
That's what we are as landlords.
Yeah, landlords, estate agents, letting agents. They're all seen as, well, just like you'd lie through your teeth to get anything. Well, a lot of us are not like that. Most of us are quite straight and quite honest and quite upfront. It's so. With estate agents, I know many that are just absolute shysters. They deserve their reputation as estate agents, because the vast majority of them, that they probably tuck up their own granny for a bit of commission. They're terrible.
You heard it first.
But there are a sprinkling of really decent people in the industry, and I'm talking about competitors. Even you on the high street, there's some really decent people out there. Like, we've got a great working relationship with Durbin's Lettings. Now, Durbin's Lettings and Landlords Letting are the only two letting agents on the high street here. We've got a great working relationship with them. We do loads of, actually, they refer their clients for sale to 3A, even though they know that we're a letting agent as well. But they know if that landlord's going to sell that property with an existing tenant, that goes back to their bins. It doesn't go to landlord's letting. You know, so we're helping them maintain their stock. You know, so you can have this working relationship with people that you can talk to and have a frank conversation with, and you're not tucking each other up and you're dealing with stuff as a professional business. But when you're going around knocking on doors and dropping in letters, trying to pinch people's houses up for sale, and that's how they all act. You know, it's like estate agents and letting agents are essentially parasitic businesses anyway, aren't they? You know,
brutal.
But they are. It is. You know, we are. They call it service
I like to
industry.
think you're complimentary, but you know.
Yeah, no, but when I say that, I don't mean it as a derogatory thing. That's what they are, aren't they? They feed off.
Yeah. They exist because of another business. Sure.
So can you imagine being a parasite on a parasite? And that's what some of these estate agents are, going around dropping letters from every door, knocking on the door, trying to steal clients. I just thought, you know, you're like, literally, we've never done it as a company. We get approached by people all the time about, you can sign up for this newsletter or this marketing plan, and what happens every time one of your competitors put a property online, we send out a letter day 2, a letter day 6, and they just blank canvas the client.
Yeah.
What I find frustrating is I know where they get that data from, and it's going to be through one of the largest portals in the UK. So we're giving our properties to them, and then they take that data and sell it to these organizations. So these people are going to market to pinch our properties off us.
Wow.
You know, I'm just,
yeah.
You know, I don't know why these portals, and there's a lot of animosity towards them because the fees for some of the portals are astronomical. You know, Rightmove, the vast majority of agents, I would imagine, are probably 1,500 quid a month or above.
Oh, is it that much? Jeez.
And I was fortunate. I say fortunate, probably not fortunate really, but I had an estate agency in Rhondda Valley back in mid-noughties. Called one of the Remax franchises, when the Remaxes were flying everywhere.
Yeah, they've come back again recently. They've started.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, the guy who's heading it up approached me on LinkedIn. And he said, would I be interested? Look, it didn't work last time. It's not going to work this time. Remax is a fantastic business model. It works well in America, where if we had 10% commission and 5%, 10% commission, as they do in other countries around the world, Remax works. That business model works.
Right.
Because it's basically you sell a property, 46% of the commission goes to the agent that's selling. It's 46 or 48. Anyway, it's in the mid-40s. Then 11% goes to your region. So essentially, as a business owner, you're left like 40. I tell you, it's 44% to the seller, 11% to the region, 45% goes to you as a business owner. So you're trying to run an estate agency with only 45% of the gross income.
Yeah, so you get like big branding and that push out, but you pay a lot for it as well.
Yeah, exactly. And the problem you've got then is, if you try running a business and you've already lost half your income, you're gonna struggle. It's a tough thing to try and achieve. However, if you're getting 10% and not 1%, all of a sudden you can afford to, like you see in America, they do these big presentations, they furnish properties, they literally empty some houses and put all new furniture in. You know, as part of the big show and the sale and everything. You know, the things that they can afford to do because there's so much commission involved. Like if I was selling a house up the Rhondda and I was getting average house, 80 grand in the Rhondda now. If I was getting £8,000 to sell a property in the Rhondda, you can do an awful lot with £8,000, can't you?
Yeah,
you know, instead you get
around it and all sorts.
Instead you get 12. Well, we charge flat fee, you know, so it's £12.50 plus the vodka and tonic for His Majesty now. We're not Her Maj, His Majesty.
I like that vodka and tonic. I've not heard that one before. I just had to go VAT registered in my coaching business. And I was like, geez, it's not like 20% price increase just like that. Because I looked at swallowing it and I was just like, I mean, it's such an interesting thing, isn't it? Like businesses literally can't, because actually the margin that most businesses make is between 1 and 10% at best. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, coaching, it's a bit, it's a bit skewed in my business because I've spent so much on creating the book and help doing that and all of that stuff. It's a bit skewed. It's like technically my business doesn't make any money because I'm just putting everything back in, right? But even when it is, all right, coaching, you probably get a higher margin because it's me and time, but actually the infrastructure involved now to do the numbers I do. I've got 39 people on my Money Mastermind course this time round. The infrastructure for that and support I need from, other people is huge. But most businesses don't make that much money. Like the actual profit, and it's the same with landlords. People go, oh, I'm paying my landlord's mortgage down. I'm like, kind of maybe, but not actually really. It's sort of, on a single let. I mean, what is it? £100 a month it makes on average by the time you take off compliance, corporation tax, all the rest of it. It's
like in lettings, we charge 10% for full management.
Yeah.
And for mates rates, so people I've got like really good working relationship with or proper friends, it's 8%.
Yeah.
And it's like the reason it's 8% is because at 8%, I'm doing a few for nothing because this is how much it costs to do the job, about 8%. Yeah. So our profit margin is only in that 2%. So I can offer you that I can do it for you for 8%, but you can't expect, even friends and family, you can't expect them to be doing the job, but it's costing them. And you might have heard me say this before, Alex, where I say it often to landlords and say, well, can't I do for that much? I said, I could stay in bed and not make any money. So why would I take on you? Why bother? Like, but we got rid of a landlord from our rental book. He had about 50, 60 properties with us. Analysing it, it was like, he needs to go. Yeah. We can't continue with this because the sheer amount of time of hours he was taking up with repairs and problems. Yeah. Like he needs to be on 15 to 20% to make it viable. Yeah. Not even 10. And he was trying to chip us and say, well, can't I do it for 8 because I'm giving you 50? I said, no, because all your properties have got problems. So and it was incredible when we got rid of him. Literally the very next month, when all his properties were gone, we were like, well, we should have done this years ago. What was we even thinking? We just got into the trap. He's a big client. He's got 50 houses. Yeah, we took a little bit of a dip in our income, but those 50 properties soon come from other areas anyway, because you're on a constant growth. So, and then you've got no hassle. So we've even, at times, when landlords have come to us and we've met them, we're going through the process and we're going through the sign a bit where they find out about us, we're finding out about them. A couple of times we've gone, oh, look, thank you, but we're not interested at this particular moment in time.
Because if you've got housing stock that, every week or every month there's a call because there's damp or a leak or maintenance or whatever, I mean, it's just a bloody nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah, and you haven't got the, like one property causing you problems can write off the profit you make on another 10.
Yeah.
So you've got to, if you're going to run a successful letting agency, you've got to keep the number of problems you've got down to a minimum. Like you can't be perfect. You're going to get problems. You can't legislate for everything. But like less than 1% of our tenants become problematic. And I can say that because I attend court around 4 or 5 times a year to evict tenants of ours that have been a problem. And with 700 properties, it's below 1%, isn't it? Yeah. So I can't even imagine what it must be like in some letting agencies or estate agents got a lettings department. I can't imagine what it must be like in those businesses. They just must get bombarded because if they're not going through the selection process at the start and they're taking the first tenant that comes through the door, then they must be having an absolute battering. They must be just fielding problem calls all day. It must be horrendous. I'd like to spend a day in one actually to see what it's like because maybe I feel a bit more relaxed coming into,
and then have a look at their accounts. I remember a few years ago, because I JV with my dad and I've just bought him out of the company, and I remember him saying to me a few years ago, he's like, Alex, why are you so hell bent on doing these heavy refurbishments? I was like, because I don't want to pick up the phone after I've rented the house out. He used to be like, I don't understand why we can't just buy houses that need a lick of paint and then rent them out. And I was like, Because they don't exist. They're a nightmare. Like, and because that's literally what a lot of landlords do, isn't it? They don't want to do the heavy work. You know, when you said a month or two for refurb, I was thinking, God, I used to take 3 to 6, but I literally used to. There was nothing left. I mean, John Street in Treherbert, you walked in the front door and you could see the roof. You know, it's a 2-story building and there was no walls left, no floor. There was literally, we replaced the joists. I mean, it was ridiculous. You know, what we did, we bought the house for 19,000. Yes, I said 19,000. Those of you living in England listening to this, we bought it for
It wasn't a
19,000.
garage, it was a house.
It was a house, 2-bed house with a garden, quite a big garden as well. And I spent 30 grand on it. I mean, there was nothing left. I took the chimney out of the back to put French doors in, you name it. But I never get any calls about that house. You know, that was back in, I don't know, 2015, maybe 2013, 10 years ago, nearly 10 years ago.
It's essentially, it's a brand new property. If you buy a brand new home, you should have 10 years maintenance free. And when you go back to stone, new central heating, new wiring, and you go through the whole thing and do all the damp proofing. Like if you're buying a 120-year-old cottage, you know, solid stone cottage, the things you find in them are incredible.
Oh my God, yeah. The joists were too small. We were on it. That John Street's a hill like that. So basically, the next door, the room in the living room, 50% of it's under the ground because the next house is up here. So the tanking we had to do to mitigate, you know, potential damp coming in.
And it is going to come through eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually, you're going to have to redo that, maybe in 30 years, 20 years, or whatever it might be. But it's not a permanent solution. Eventually, water finds its way through.
Yeah.
We had a refurbishment project up in the Rhondda, and there was a 3-story extension built on the back of this house. And what they did, they put a couple of pillars underneath. So the one wall had a bit of overhang, so it created this little area, and a little overhang underneath by the back door.
Yeah.
So we're sort of hacking all the render where this is expecting for it to be RSJs there, you know? So it's all been hacked out, looked under there. They had 4 railway line, old pieces of railway line.
No.
Railway line. 4 of them in a line. No RS. I thought, that doesn't look like an RSJ. That's a funny shape. When we looked at it, you could see it was railway line. It even had a little bit of rust on it, you know? It's holding up 2 stories of extension. It'd been there for years, probably 20 years. It was doing a good job, but
it was all right.
I suppose it's recycling in some way, Alex, isn't it?
Oh my God, it's mad though, isn't it? What people do, and the
that's
stuff.
The thing. So when you open these properties up, you know you don't know what somebody's done. Yeah. Like you sometimes go into a property and they've put a bit of boxing in the middle of the room where the wall used to be, as if it's RSJ in there. What they've done is just built a box to pretend there's an RSJ in there, so the council don't have a go.
Yeah, Pembroke Street. That's what happened there. So they'd taken the 2 rooms together. The pillars are there, the boxing in's there, and there was an RSJ there, but it was sat on. They basically ordered it, and it was too short. It was only sat on an inch of the pillar. So the thing basically, it's like, you know, it's like, hello. But people just, I call it a fuck it, it's Friday afternoon job. People just go, fuck it, it'll be all right. Cover it up, lads. You know, same in Lansdale, new build house. They didn't finish the garage is basically underground. So when you walk over to the front door, you're walking over the lower ground floor. And they just never bothered. There's 3 walls. They never sealed it up. So we just get water pouring in. And when we basically dug up the garden and looked, there was breeze blocks missing. And it was literally like they ran out of the last 3 breeze blocks and just went, fuck, put the roof over. Because it's basically a roof on the ground, right? So all they did went, fuck it, put the roof over, covered it over, job done. I'm like, this is a new build. I bought it in auction, half finished off. Yeah. I mean, you won't bust, right? So...
Yeah, this is the problem, isn't it? And sometimes when you go through the heavier refurbishments, you will unearth other problems as well.
Yeah.
So some of the timber work in these properties could be 120 years old.
Yeah.
So if there's an issue there, and you go in and you could spend 20 grand on a normal refurb, and then to find out, then all of a sudden you've got to hack off at plaster and pull things down and make a big mess again. Yeah. And if you've done it at the start, it would cost you a couple of £100. Now all of a sudden there's a couple of grand.
Yeah.
So that's why sometimes I'm with you on that. I'd rather buy something that's proper dilapidated.
Yeah.
If you're going to do a refurbishment project,
Yeah.
I'd rather it be a pig of a house that you can go back full
You've got to
stone
gut it
walls.
anyway. Whereas when you go in and someone's gone, oh, look, it's fine. There's a new kitchen. There's a new bathroom. You know, all of that. Oh, we're getting some interesting spam today. Let's just delete that on the messages. Inviting us all to... Can you see that on the side of your screen?
I'm not looking, to be honest.
God Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, help me with my education fees. $400 please. I fucking love an entrepreneur. I love it. Hey, Mambu Karma. I'm going to block you, but I love it. It's just hilarious stuff that comes up. Anyway, sorry, we digress. But new kitchen, new bathroom, redecorated throughout. And I go, where's your consumer unit for the electrics? And then you see it, and it's like worse. It's not even a new consumer unit. It's like, remember the old ones with like
the fuses, all the fuses.
Yeah. I'm like, but you've just refurbed the whole house, and now you've got to have all the floors up. You've got to do all the electrics again. So basically, that refurb, the tart up, that probably cost 20 grand. It's like, but there was no point in doing it because you haven't done the electrics, or haven't done the plumbing. You know, we've still got a back boiler.
Things. Well, if it's a modern construction property, the first thing you do is electrics and the central heating system. If it's an older house, a solid stone property, I always suggest damp proofing. Get in, hack it off, even if there's no evidence of damp.
Yeah, just do it anyway.
Doesn't matter. It's exposed now. Do the damp proofing, because it might not be damp now, but that damp proof course is only a chemical DPC anyway, which eventually, when that chemical fills up and gets attracts all them, it becomes damp again. So then they have to drill all that out and put fresh chemicals in. It's not a solution to the problem forever. It's a solution just for now. The only way you could solve it properly, because I thought like one random probably after a couple of Stellas or something, I think there's got to be a way. There must be a way to solve the damp issues in these properties, in particular the rising damp. I thought the only way you could actually do it, you'd have to lift the whole house up, put the damp-proof membrane down, and plump it back down.
On a tray. And it wouldn't just be one because it's a terrace, so you'd have to lift
you'd have to lift up the whole street bit by bit. You'd have to do some sort of wave system where you lift a couple up at a time going down the street. That is literally the only way you can solve it. Is by somehow getting a damp-proof membrane, all around the property to stop the water going up. So it's a never-ending problem in the valleys. Condensation is another big battle we fight with. I was in a flat only last week, and I popped in it for a completely other reason. But while I was there, I did just a basic inspection because they were. I was actually looking at the flat underneath, and I walked in. He said, "Oh, look," pointed at the black spot mold he had in the property, and I'm in the house. He's cooking, and I just, it's really warm in there, and there's a lot of moisture in here. I said, the problem we've got, I can tell there's a huge amount of moisture in this house. What you need to do is like most modern windows, they can lock on vent. I said, do me a favour, lock all the windows on vent, every one of them, and leave them like it, and we'll have a look in a couple of weeks and see the difference it makes. So I'm going to pop back up and see if he's listened to that advice and see if he has done it. And because he'll notice a massive difference. Because the one bedroom where there's no damp problems at all is the one they don't go in. They just use for storage, and the door's always shut. And because they use it for ironing, they've always got it on vent. The window always on vent. Because they know that steam coming off the iron and everything else. That's where the moisture comes from.
Yeah.
And
it's massive, isn't it? It's huge, that and people go, "Oh, I've got damp," and I'm like, "It's not damp. It's condensation. Just open the windows. Have some fresh air." Like, because even from a health point of view, for human beings, open the fucking windows. Just open the windows and get some fresh air in.
I've got really mild asthma. I had asthma as a kid. I used to use pumps and stuff like that. It doesn't bother me or hinder me in any way whatsoever. However, if I walk into a house that's got black spot mold in it, with all those little spores floating around inside, I walk in, I start wheezing and I'd be in the house, and I'm like, you got black spot mold here? No, we haven't. I said, you have. My chest has gone tight. I said, it's not good for you. And I said, honestly, you've got a damp problem here. No, there's no damp here at all. I said, I'm literally down in the hallway, and I ready my chest is wheezing. So I said, right, I'm going to look around. go upstairs and they've got a big double wardrobe pushed right against the wall.
Yeah.
I said, it's going to be behind that wardrobe. No. Opened the cupboard doors. You couldn't really see it too much on the back of the paneling, because sometimes all that starts going down.
Goes through, yeah.
So I just wedged it forward a little bit, and it was black. They went, "Oh my God, we didn't even know that was there." I said, "That is affecting." I said, "Have any children got any breathing problems?" "Oh, youngest kid's got asthma." I said, "Well, that's what's causing it.
Wow.
You need to sort that out, because this, and it's quite often you get calls and tenants will phone up and say, "Oh, there's a massive damp problem in this house and the landlord's got to sort it out." Blah, blah. And you go there, it's condensation. Now, trying to explain to most tenants get it, but some tenants are like, no, this is a damp problem. You need to solve this. Simply, you need to heat your property adequately and ventilate adequately. And they'll go, "Well, those rooms are okay, but our room's a nightmare." Yeah, because you've got 2 adults in that room sleeping in the night, and the amount of moisture you breathe out alone. And if you've got that window shut all night when you're in your sleep, well, it'd be cold then. So yeah, that's the cold air coming in and circulating around the house, and that's what prevents this black spot mold from arriving, and starting to fester. There's these PIV units.
I was just about to say, I started fitting New Airs as the New Air. I can't remember. They're Dry Masters. They're called
Dry Master. Yeah,
for that reason, that bring in air from the attic or Flat Masters from outside and push it in. Because I had a couple of houses where the tenants just wouldn't believe me, and I was like, they weren't doing anything. So I was like, I've got to do something, because otherwise the black mold, if it's left too long, it starts to cause some serious damage to stuff.
It just ruins the plaster, doesn't it? It's incredible. They'll put one of those new PIV units in.
You can have rooms that are literally covered in black. I mean, I've never had one, but I've seen all the videos of people who've put them in. The rooms are black. You put it in and it's gone. And it's fresh air. And it's a bit like health. It's too simple to get, that if you drink water and eat vegetables and move a bit and like breathe, that you'll be fine. It's almost too simple that if you open the windows and let fresh air in, the air will clean everyone wants this like big dramatic solution. It's like, just open the window.
But you think what's going to happen now with the gas and electric prices going up? What are people going to do this winter? If a lot of people are now going to stop ventilating so much because they have the fear of opening the windows and losing all that heat. But it's so important to your health, And I envisage quite a bad winter for condensation problems this year, because people are going to be so cautious of, especially people on prepayment meters. They put in 50 quid in and watching it disappear, which those prepayment meters should be banned. Them sticking an extra 30% on top, 20%, 30% on top of what gas and electric's costing. Imagine that now with the price increases, it's going to be diabolical. They should be gone, and they should be paying the same price if they're paying in advance or if they're paying in arrears, or whether it's a standing order. The gas and electric should cost the same price, especially now with these smart meters. Because it's not an extra cost for their infrastructure.
Well, the infrastructure's already there. They're actually getting paid, apart from people who are direct debit kind of paying in advance. Right, it's nice for the companies because of the sheer volume. But actually, on a prepayment meter, then they're rarely in arrears. I know some people go into the £5, but it's stopped at £5.
Yeah,
they're paying as they use it. So there's no debt collection like there would be for a bill where there's a credit bill and people are hundreds or thousands of pounds in arrears, because it's like, so
they might have to pay some money to the shops where they're buying it from, but they've circumvented that now, haven't they? Because now you can do it all via an app. You can actually do it, via your smartphone.
I've got a meter in Vic Ave, my holiday let, and I've set up a standing order. It's a bit weird, so it's technically prepayment, which means there's no standing charge, and I can do it from my phone. I can do it from anywhere. You don't have to go into a shop to top it up.
Yeah, exactly. So there's
smart meter.
So there's no need for that extra cost to be dumped on top. And it's funny, isn't it? Because you always, the people who tend to be on smart meters tend to be the people with a lower income, and they're the ones paying more. It's like it's wrong, isn't it? With a tax, it's like if you take out a loan, if you've got bad credit, you're paying 30% interest. Well, the ones who can afford the 30% interest are the ones who've got the good jobs and are buying flash cars. The ones who can't, who are struggling, they're the ones who are getting hammered on this ridiculous interest rates. It's just, because they're less likely to pay. All right, well, don't give them the money then, because if you're lending the money and then you're putting people into massive holes, and it's, you know, like those payday loans and things like that, thousands of % interest, were just basically loan sharks in a modern world, aren't they? You know, and it's always the
people can't afford it.
The people on the bottom are the ones who get trampled on the most, as a rule of thumb. And we've been sitting here feeling sorry for ourselves and sorry for landlords and sorry for agents and everything else. Yeah, but there's them that, like, I'm having conversations with landlords going, well, this is how much you could get for this house now. This is how much it should be. Like, we just put a 2-bed on at 750. In all fairness to the landlord there, but he could have got 800 quid for that. 800 quid, 825. I said, it really, where it should be is 725, 750. You know, that's in today's market. However, you've got others then that go on 200 quid more than where it should be. And they're getting the rents.
Because of supply and demand.
Yeah, and it's very tough as an agent going out and having a conversation with landlords, because you've got to say, well, this is how much the rent should be. However, because of the market conditions, you can sort of dictate to what way you want it to be. So it's a terrible situation when you're there, because your job is to try and tell that client what's the maximum they can get. That's what your job is. That's what they using you for. It's the same when you go to value a house for sale. You're telling that client what the maximum they could possibly achieve for their property. So that's what they're instructing you for. That's why they're paying you the fees. But there's also another element then where, like, if we're managing the property, we want to make sure that rent that's being charged it's got to be sustainable. Because if it's not, then they're not going to pay the rent. They're not going to look after
and then
the
it's
property.
a problem.
If landlords take the piss on the rent, tenants are not stupid. They know what a property should be. They've seen the rents going up, like you and I have seen them going up, and they know, they can see which ones are being pushed, a bit too far. So they're going to think, oh, well, we're desperate at the moment. We'll go in that house, but as soon as something better comes up, we'll move. So they've already gone in with a mindset, this is a short-term rent. We're not staying here forever. So are they going to paint walls? Are they going to keep it clean? Are they going to look after it? It's just going to be a DOS house until they find something better, more reasonably priced. So that extra 150 or whatever quid you get in, 200 quid, or in some instance, just £100. To what work are you going to have to do when they vacate to put that property back right? And plus you've got the tenant fine fee and potentially a void period. How many £100 are you just lost? You know?
Yeah, so to get a quick buck now.
Yeah. So sometimes you try and educate landlords on that aspect of it, try and get them to look at the bigger picture, not just what's the maximum I can get, because it's not always about the maximum.
This now, short term.
Yeah, exactly. So it's tough, but it's trying to get the balance right, because rents have got to go up. It's the same with we'll be doing another rent review now for all our tenants, before Christmas, because we still got some tenants, some rent in the 300s, but they've been there.
One of mine, I think one of mine's at 400.
They've been there. Some have been there like 15 years.
Yeah.
Some of them do a lot of their own maintenance and stuff like that, because they look after the property like it's their own
home.
What,
they're worth their weight in gold, and I'd rather keep the rent where it is, for sure.
Yeah, a good tenant is worth 50 quid. Like the guy I just sold his 750 is his rent going up on that 2-bed. The guy who's in there before him, I think he was paying either 525 or 550. He's actually my cousin as well, and he hadn't put his rent up for 4 or 5 years. He's like, I don't hear from him. He's been there 4 or 5 years. The rent just goes into my bank account. I've never heard from him. Not one phone call in that period.
That's worth so much money.
Not a single call out. He's put new laminate flooring downstairs. The property's coming back. It's going to be immaculate. It's in really good order. Yeah. Garden's been maintained and grass always cut. He's painted it a couple of times. He even said before he gives the keys back, he's going to have all the carpets cleaned.
It's a different world, isn't it? Yeah. So
yes, he's been losing between 100 and 200 quid a month over the last 2 years, in essence. However, is in the long run, he hasn't had any bother at all. So it's about getting a balance right, and we like that with tenants. You've got to nudge the rent up a little bit, but you don't want to be pushing them up to the maximum, because then you're likely that that tenant might look for something else or might find something private from somebody or a family friend. They can be actively looking if they're paying too much. So if you can get a balance right, and we got tenants been in properties 15 to 20 years, same tenant, same house, got a fantastic working relationship with them. You know, we go out and see them so we go and do checks on some properties. It's a complete waste of time. Go there. Like we got one, funny enough, it's up for sale at the moment with 3 and come Curdin up in Gilbach. She's probably the best tenant, if not the best tenant we've ever had. She's certainly one of them.
One of the top, so,
yeah. Rent's always on a button. She got a couple of. She's always had dogs. You won't believe she's got dogs. She got I think a couple of children. You won't believe she got children. The place is like not a pin out of place. Whenever we want to go there, it's not a problem with access. We're going to check that house. We're not checking her. We just check for any repair issues and just keeping that continuity, that relationship going, isn't it? We go and see them every 3 or 4 months. But generally, I could write an inspection report now what it's going to be like. Because if she did have a repair issue or a damp problem or something like that, she would report it. But you've got to check just in case. So it could be a bit of a guttering problem, or you see a bit of staining on the outside of a wall, or you see a bit of a leak by a radiator. So when we're looking at a property, we're looking for potential repairs that could lead to quite a bit of damage to a house. You know, because that's what the purpose of the inspection is. It's not just checking a tenant. You know, you could have a couple of roof tiles that slipped in the summer in a couple of windy days.
Nightmare,
and then you get into the winter months and the heavens open. Can't get a roofer because everyone else's roofs are leaking because now all of a sudden the rains have come.
Same with gas engineers at that time of year.
September, October, when everyone starts cranking up their thermostats again, and they haven't run their boiler for months. You know, and they go, "Oh, my central heating's not working." But sometimes just top up the pressure and simple things. But if you start looking at those now and just checking them now, when you're going through the usual inspections, just prevents that big wave of problems, doesn't it? And you know, you get water ingress into a property. If something that's a 60 quid, 90 quid fix becomes a couple of £1,000 worth of damage, doesn't it? Quite easily. So
so is that property being sold with that tenant, or is she moving? You're doing that one as sold with tenant.
And it's probably worth, I'd probably say 145, 150. It's on the market for 130. You know, because an investment sale. So you pitch them, so another investor will come along and buy it. In all fairness, the landlord, he built the house as well, and he really appreciates her as a tenant. He did want to sell it to her. If she could have been able to buy it, he would have done it. But that's sadly haven't worked out. But he's prepared to sell her a bit cheaper, but it's on the prerequisite. Any other landlord buys it, they've got to sign up with her for at least 2 or 3 years. You know, because he wants to look after her because she's been so good. Well, and these are the type of stories people don't talk about. They don't make the Wales Online and, you know, nice landlord offers house cheap because lovely tenant's been looking after the property and she's been wonderful for 10 plus years. These are not the stories that HTV or BBC do documentary on.
This is nightmare tenant, nightmare landlord of the 1%. And then everyone else, actually, I've got one in Aberdare, and they'll buy the house off me. They've done all sorts of work to it, and you know, when they're ready, they'll buy it off me at a price that we've agreed. Yeah,
but that's the thing is, the vast majority of the industry, this is what it's like. You know, the agent's got a good relationship with the tenant, the contractor's got a good relationship with the agent, the landlords are happy, and the work is being done, and they look after the tenants, and there's all sorts of positive things happening all the time, you know, and you think, fair play to them, that's generous, or fair play, you know, they've done that, or, you know, vast majority of people are good, decent people. It's such a small percentage that spoil it for the majority, such a small percentage. But like I said, they don't make the media headlines, do they? They don't the stories people talk about in the pub. Yes, I listen to landlords talking all the time about
this is why it's a podcast 2 to 3 hours long, so we can actually get into this is actually what life's really like, not sound bites of nightmare tenant or nightmare landlord or all of that, because it's a different world, isn't it?
I always ask, and I'm not saying that this is something that landlords are not capable of doing, but you ask any landlord who's had a load of hassle and ask them how did they find a tenant, And the vast majority of them did it themselves, or a friend of a friend, or somebody knocked on the door when they were doing the refurbishment. They thought, sorry, they'll give them a chance, they seem okay.
Yeah.
You know, the vast majority of those people who have major problems because they haven't taken a professional company or taken somebody that's got a good reputation at setting up tenancies and finding the right tenant and use them for that process. It's like if you run a business, why would you not use an accountant? An accountant could charge you £1,000 for doing your bookkeeping for you. However, they earn their fee back tenfold, and it's no different to a letting agency, especially if it's a decent one. They're putting the time and effort in and doing things right to ensure not ensure, but make it far less likely that you get problems, because you can't
there'll always be,
you'd always get one. And you can't, like I said earlier, you can't legislate for everything. We've had tenants been wonderful, and all of a sudden the son who's been in prison for 6 years comes back, moves into the house, all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, exactly. Life circumstances change, and a tenant that's been fine. I mean, the one that we had in Nanty Moyle, loads of children had dogs, bred the dogs there, everything was fine, and then started getting into sort of relationship issues with the with the couple, and the whole thing just collapsed. And they've been my best tenants, and the least likely. I remember Jonathan phoning me going, on paper, not great, but actually cracking.
Really nice.
And I went, fine, great. 6 years, not a problem. And then all of a sudden, relationship breakdown, and a few £1,000s of arrears and an eviction, and it's really sad. But
like that lady I mentioned earlier. At the time, I think at the time of her moving in, I think she was on benefits with 2 children and dogs. All red flags to most landlords
on paper,
and she's, like I said, if not the best, certainly up there. We've been fortunate over the years. We've had countless hundreds of fantastic tenants. The vast majority. There's only
people just want to get on. Most people want to live in a house, know that they're secure.
It's funny because we mentioned about the Section 21s earlier, and using the Section 21 route or the Section 8 route. For those who don't know the difference between the two, Section 21 is basically no fault evictions. They haven't done anything wrong. Section 8 is when they haven't paid rent or they've done something wrong. They didn't breach their tenancy, basically. So you can use either of those 2 routes to evict the tenant. The vast majority of people use Section 21 just because it's easier. Even though they are doing something wrong, they still use that route. And then with Section 8 as well, it's always, when you get to court, the vast majority of time, intern Shelter Cymru, who are there to prevent homelessness, apparently, but are probably doing more to create homelessness than they've ever done to prevent it. I've probably personally done more to prevent homelessness than them. Because
I've had some interventions from them, and it was really unhelpful. And I was like, you're trying to prevent homelessness and you're causing more problems, and I don't want to deal with you because you're just horrific.
Exactly.
Lamai, how do you? And they work with landlords, and they're brilliant, and they really are preventing homelessness.
There's lots of great people out there that are doing the right thing. Like if I attend court and we're looking to evict a tenant, let's say they're in rent arrears. Quite often the council will come in and they'll offer a chunk of money. These negotiations happen prior to you getting to court, normally, where they're going to pay. Let's say there's £3,000 arrears, and the council will pay because there's a backdated claim that the tenant didn't put in, so they were entitled for the money but didn't have it. So they use discretionary then to backdate it a bit further. So it's not as if the council are giving money that the tenant wasn't entitled to anyway. But they'll come in and they'll do something like that, and you can then say, right, what we'll do today now, we'll get possession, but we won't then instruct the bailiffs as long as this money comes in from the council. And then you maintain these payments going forward on time every day. And I've done that countless times in court and had probably around a 95% success rate with those tenants, and now remained in the property, the arrears have been paid off, and that relationship's been fixed.
And it's always better then. The relationship's actually then better. It's a bit like when I worked in restaurants. Actually, the table that made complaints that was dealt with well end up becoming best customers, because then you've got this relationship, haven't you?
They can trust that when they come there, if there is an issue, it's going to be dealt with appropriately, and they know it's sort of like a guarantee that is going to be good whatever happens. It's the same with us, you know. If we get a problem tenant, we don't ship it out to a solicitor to deal with. We deal with all the court application. We deal with all the eviction process. You know, meeting the bailiffs, taking the property back, and then organise all the contracts, put things right in the property as and when needed. And then once you end up with a final figure that's due, we then instruct. If it's over 600 quid, we use the High Court sheriffs to collect the money, which they're fantastic. They're far better. Well, they got far more powers than the county court bailiffs. So we just go straight to get a High Court writ, get the High Court sheriffs on it. The money comes in then fairly quickly normally. But they're all like, that's us tidying up a mess. It might not be we actually created, but we are sort of that. We feel as it's our job because it's gone sour for them. We then do all this extra that's not in our terms and conditions. However, we do it all to help put right what has gone wrong. Because it's like you're sort of responsible in a way. But we also get lots of landlords coming to us who have probably put them in themselves, or the relationship has broken down, and we could end up at court evicting them, and then we get these offers, and we try to put a situation in place then where we've taken over management, so we create a barrier between the two personalities that have been at loggerheads for whatever reason. You know, sometimes the tenant's asking for stuff the landlord shouldn't be doing. Other times, the landlord's asking the tenant to do stuff they shouldn't be doing. And sometimes when you've got somebody in between going, no, actually, no, this is what you should be doing, and that's what you should be doing. And it creates, and we can draw a line in the sand. And some of those have continued being tenants with us, great working relationship for many years. So you can more often than not solve problems if people meet in the middle and people work together. But quite often, when some of the shelter and people like that get involved, they sometimes come at it with the wrong.
Well, it does it the other way round, doesn't it? Because if we're going into it like trying to communicate, work it out, how does everyone win? Whereas shelter's like, it feels to me as a landlord, it feels like shelter thinks we're all absolute scum of the earth and they're going to treat us as such. And we're like, whoa, hang on a second. But there's no way of like communicating because they're just like, no. I mean, they've had a, I can't remember which house it was. I remember them instructing one of my tenants to stop paying the rent. And I'm like, how mad are you to say
how was that? How was that?
Tenant should pay.
How is that advice?
How is that
advice?
Yeah, and advising not to leave the property when the eviction date, not the eviction, the notice date comes up, or don't pay the rent and stay in the property.
Well, the council say that as well. They say when your notice expires, don't move out because if they make themselves voluntarily homeless, then they fall down the pecking order.
Yeah.
But what happens a lot when landlords come up against shelter or get frustrated with evictions and they get all these problems, they feel then less likely then to rent that property again. So not only have you had a problem with that tenant, eventually he's going to be made homeless anyway.
You can in a bad way and probably with adverse credit now as well. So it's just multiplied their problems by God knows what.
Yeah, you can frustrate it. You can frustrate an eviction process. You can't stop it. The only people who can stop it is by the tenant making changes and the landlord accepting, those changes and finding a happy ground where there's a glimmer of hope going forward. You can only really do it with the landlord being, sort of prepared to allow that tenant to remain.
Yeah.
What shelter often do is try and find holes in the application process, whether it's a slight technicality on a document or something, some little error to get it thrown out.
Yeah.
Or on Section 8, and it's happened to me a couple of times, is what the tenant comes along, they make up all these spurious allegations that the landlord hasn't been doing repairs, and they're going to counterclaim against the landlord's claim for possession and the rent arrears, and their argument is if and when we win this claim, it's going to be the landlord owes them money, not the other way around. But at that point in time, when you're at that courtroom, they've got no evidence to this other than allegations that that person is made up, whether coached by shelter or not. I'm not insinuating that's what they're doing, but they might be asking the questions to get the right answers, and then coming up with this defence. Well, if they want to counterclaim in that situation, they're funded, because it's part of a possession claim. They get funded by taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
They get funded to fight the whole claim.
Yeah, so they've got legal aid the whole way.
Legal aid the whole way for the whole case.
Yeah.
Well, what should happen? The possession claim and the rent arrears should be dealt with, because that's what we brought in front of the court. If they want to claim for damages because of a lack of repairs, etc., they're free to do that at a later date. And if that resulted in them losing their home, then they can come at the landlord, and they can come at the landlord very, very strongly, because you're talking, essentially, it's like not an illegal eviction, but it'd be classed as that tenant shouldn't have been evicted in this circumstance, and you've taken somebody's home away from them when you shouldn't have.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You're talking many thousands of pounds of damages.
The book has been thrown at you.
Yeah. But if you take the legal aid away, because now it's not about possession, it's just about her or him wanting to claim for damages, they've got to fund that case themselves. So when they've got to put their hand in their pocket and take a risk themselves, they're not going to be so keen of chucking anything between 5 and 15 grand towards a court case. They're not going to do that out of their own money. I would second guess they wouldn't. But the landlord is stuck. They've got to fund their whole defence against something that's a load of rubbish, but they're already, potentially 5, 10, 15 grand into a hole then. Like whilst I'm happy to go and deal with possession cases and everything else, when you get into this nitty gritty with the money claim and stuff like that, and it starts getting a bit heavier from a legal point of view, and if you're going up against a solicitor, you're essentially taking a big punt, aren't you, using just a letting agent who's having a bash rather than getting a properly legal trained professional,
Yes and no, but then I've had some horror stories. I mean, I've referred people to you who are getting terrible advice from solicitors, and I don't know whether it's just because they don't do it all the time, or they haven't got experience of going to court. But the number of times I'm like, just phone Di, don't speak to the solicitor, even if I don't know which solicitor they're going to phone, because I've had more not great stories about solicitors. And to those solicitors out there, if you're listening to this, and you're a great solicitor and all that, this isn't about you. This is about the ones that have fucked up on putting the wrong date on a form.
Yeah.
That's what shops go after, right? They go after, there's an anomaly on the form, this is wrong, la la la.
I think that the problem you've got is, I don't envy solicitors. I don't envy them at all, because they're so hamstrung by what they can say and what they can do. And I've been in situations between buyers and sellers in the estate agency game where both sets of solicitors want to say something, but neither can. And it's like a transaction has hit a loggerhead. It's logjam, hit a logjam, and it's over something like really ridiculous.
Yeah.
Let's say it's a mining search, and it's shown that there's a mine shaft 50 meters from the house.
No shit, in the valleys.
the mine was closed down 250 years ago or whatever it was. Like, do you know what I mean? It was, it hadn't been used for literally well over a century. Yeah. But the solicitor, all he can say is, look, there's a mine shaft here. This could potentially affect your sale.
Yeah.
They can't say, look, it's over 100 odd years. There's no evidence to subsidence. Don't worry about it, for God's sake. They're not going to give that advice because of potentially being sued down the line. Yeah. So they've got to be inherently pessimistic about everything, and it's fear mongering. Like, have we ever had the privilege of reading a level 3 building survey in today's world?
Yep, they're a nightmare. Anyone who would buy a house after reading one of those surveys, brave, because the way they're written is horrific. I'm like, really? Come on.
Yeah. 200 pages of arse covering. That's what's in there. It's ridiculous. However, the surveyors, again, like the solicitors, they're hamstrung by this being sued if something goes wrong.
Insurance premiums and everything.
We refurbished a property up in Aniswen with Treorchy, and myself and Melanie did it. We went back to stone, damp proofing, all new windows, doors. In this building survey report, the survey said for the windows, in decent condition for their age and type. Fucking brand new. They've literally been in like 4 weeks. 4 weeks. You could put the windows and doors are all brand new because
Yeah.
they still had the bloody covers on the handles. You know, the little plastic covers.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just, you go, well, what have you got to do? Like, you know, it had a full rewire and had new central heating system, or that new system, might have had new rads and stuff like that. I can't remember anyway, but they put the gas and electric down as a level 3. So that's like a serious matter. They'll do, most of all, they'll do that, especially up in the valleys, they'll do our damp proofing. And even though there's no evidence of damp, it's still a 3 because they're prone to damp and condensation problems. It's like, you know, if you speak to the surveyors, quite some surveyors will actually have a bit more of a frank conversation with you about it. And
off the record
just
and in speaking, nothing written down.
But the document itself, the solicitors are completely, they can't even do that. They in every word they guarded with. You know, I've had it where it's literally, it's taken me a phone call between a buyer and a seller because neither solicitor can tell each solicitor or their clients what each party wants to hear. And I just phone up and tell the buyer this, tell the seller that, and then yes, I'm telling you why the solicitor is doing it and why there's a risk. However, it's a brand new estate. Houses are selling there all the time. When was the last time you seen a house not sell there because of the mine shaft? Don't worry about it. You know, you wouldn't be to find where the mine shaft is. There's no evidence in the ground where it is, where like stuff is sinking down, those big gaping hole. There's nothing there. You know, and you can have that frank conversation, can't you? Just a common folk, you know, as a layman, as the solicitors like to call us. This is
you can get it. Yeah, you can be more straight. And I think in a world where litigation has got mad and insurance has got a bit mad, actually, you've almost got to be a bit brave and courageous and just go, do you know what? I think this is, and I'm not saying to people like, you know, do something stupid, like, sure, get a survey, but use your freaking head. You know, I say to my clients, look, your accountant, you know, the main professions we work with are accountants, solicitors, and mortgage brokers, in the sense of that, you know, the main kind of, you know, with buying and selling and all the rest. So I'm like, look, they might be professionals, but you've got to use your head. You've got to ask the right questions. You've got to understand what you're doing. Because if you just solely rely on them with all the hamstringing that they've got, and so you're never going to make a decision. You're always going to be like, oh my God, have you seen the mortgage survey? And the solicitors kind of bringing up something else. And, you know, your accountant saying, well, HMRC might not like this. And, you know, this is the rule here. It's like, no one would ever get anything done. In fact, I think it's almost being a bit, not stupid, but just kind of like, oh, well, we'll give it a go. In this day and age, you almost have to be like that. Have a bit of common sense. Think about it. Like you've just said, it's so obvious, isn't it? Look, there's loads of houses on the estate. None of them are falling down. You can't see the mine shaft. Houses are buying and selling. Everything's fine. Like, it's so freaking obvious, but people get paralysed.
You've got the Cum Colliery in Tenant in Berry. That was quite a big colliery, and run my dad was a miner down there, and they literally all under from Coed back there. There's just faces and seams of coal that have been dug out. It's like the London Tube map just underneath the area. Yet, just even though that there's all those mine shafts there and there's all that coal has been dug out of the ground, not a single house has fallen down in. It's a lie, actually. I was going to say not a single house has fallen down in Baden because of the mining. One has fallen down, but that wasn't because of the mining. That was because when they built the shops, it was a bungalow, and the bungalow was fat. And when they dug out the ground to create the car park below, they didn't shore up the banking. So the bungalow sort of started falling down into the car park. So that's because they didn't. Because people when they built the shops, they obviously didn't ensure this bungalow didn't fall down. That had nothing to do with mining. That was to do with the idiots that built the shop. But other than that, I've got no history of any property having subsidence or falling down in the area. And yet all those houses have been on there for, well, since vast majority since the 60s stroke 70s. A couple of estates being built more like 90s and a few in more recent times. But there's no evidence of subsidence anyway. You've got a couple of terraced houses probably built there when the mine first opened, decades and decades ago. But there's no issue anywhere. So why do you even do a mining search in Wales?
When you put it like that, because we know what it's going to say.
So I can tell you, yeah, it's going to be close to a mine or above a mine shaft, or it's going to be evidence of some sort of mining in your vicinity. Like, you don't need to pay for the search. I can tell you that it's going to be a fact now. It's like when they changed the floodplains, and all of a sudden insurance companies didn't want to insure properties within a certain distance to a river.
Yeah.
But you could be 50 meters from a river in the Rhondda.
Up a hill.
You could also be 50 meters above it. It's not far off. And you go in, it's in the floodplain. It really isn't like. Yeah. If that property floods, we're talking biblical.
We need Noah and his ark again.
Yeah, like forget the rest of South Wales. You mean Cardiff, Bridgend, everything else will be gone if they're underwater. It's just, but you can't. Sometimes it goes to that people making decisions based on simple data and facts and figures without just looking at a certain level of information. Without how can you say right within 50 meters of a river? What about the topography? What is so important?
Yeah.
Like I'm sure, like in Holland or Netherlands, I should say now, isn't it? I'm sure there's most of those properties got a damn big flood risk because it's literally flat. Actually, name in Welsh is Iseldiroedd, which means lowlands. That's the Welsh name for it, or flatlands. But so places like that, there's risk of flooding. It's windy in the valleys. The couple of areas that do flood is because they've had some of the waterways where you've got when it gets heavy floods. Some of those have been blocked up with debris and branches and stuff like that. There's a couple of pumping stations up there that they need sometimes. They flooded up in Treorchy once, didn't because they forgot to turn the pumping station on, I think. Welsh Road had to pay Welsh Road had to pay a bit of commission, a bit of insurance payout on some of those because they found out the fault was back to something Welsh Road had done. But it's Natural Resources Wales and people like that. That's what they're there for, isn't it? To look after all that sort of stuff. But to think that some of these houses in a floodplain, just because they're close proximity to a river, and it could be a little tiny brook, that.
It just says, close to a river. That's it. Here's the map. I mean, I think just on that. I mean, the stuff that's being built, and my bonus mum, so Owen's dad's partner, she used to work for the council, and she used to say, I don't understand why they're building in some of these places. There are maps showing on the council's own website which land is going to be under the sea soon, within our lifetime, probably. So when I go over the Severn Bridge, the new one, and they're building all those houses there, I'm going, sure. And she's like, yeah, all of that's underwater, on the maps with the predictions. And all right, we could have a whole conversation about, are the predictions true? Is it real? All of that. But it's like, well, if we're not going to insure some houses because of flood risks, why the F are we building houses on areas that are effectively already floodplains, or basically, I mean, they're barely above the Severn estuary. How they don't flood now on a high tide is beyond. And yet we just go, we'll build that. Cardiff Bay? Really? Oh, all right, St David's Hotel, it's got lots of floors, so you could lose a few of the floors and get a boat in, but it's mad, isn't it?
This is the trouble, we better not get into the environment or flat earth, because then I think all the rest of the stuff we've been talking about is a load of crap as well, Alex. Let's leave all the conspiracy stuff to one side, isn't it? But...
should. Yeah. But so where are you going? What do you think is where are you going in property over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years? I mean, it's almost unimaginable to think, God, where are we going to be in 20 years?
To be honest, if all goes well, I'll be done and out of this shit in 10. I think, we've done, Jonathan and I, we got the estate agent between us, and myself and my sister obviously been running the lettings now for 20 years. And I think I'd like to be in a position, but I'm sort of getting around 50, early 50s, to take a massive step back. So I'm looking more exit strategy. I am now. I've just 6 days. You can't work 6 days a week. And people think, oh, it's just sat behind a desk. But when you're doing 60 plus hours, 6 days a week and never taking your holiday entitlement every year, because you just don't, unless you're going abroad, you just work. It's because it's very difficult, isn't it? When it's an opportunity to go make money, there's an opportunity to keep building that business. It's very difficult to go out, I'll have a day off today. I often find myself clearing emails.
This first year, we've taken any real time off, and it has taken Owen and I everything not to, do work. Because actually we love what we do as well, is the thing, right? And there's always something to do, because now living on another bloody, effectively, what will be a building site for the next 5 years. Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, we're going to Portugal at the end of October, but it's for the kids, really. Do I want to flip and schlep on a train somewhere and stay in a house that I don't know? Not really. Frankly, I'd rather be here.
Yeah, your phone will be on. You'll be dealing with emails. You might be somewhere else, but you're not properly off. I think when you run your own business, you never really turn off and have proper downtime. You're always dealing with calls, dealing with emails, and still doing stuff. Like quite often on a Sunday, I'll log on to the computer from home and just clear the emails. When I get in first thing Monday morning, because Mondays and Fridays are carnage with us, I do that just so it makes life a bit easier. So I know it's difficult because, like you said, I enjoy business. I enjoy that aspect of it. I'd like to be able to, when I say stop at 50, and what I mean by take a massive step back, be in a position where, you can have other people running the business, or potentially sell the business and just do a bit of property stuff, but just do it on a smaller scale, more just to keep your mind occupied rather than doing 50 plus, 60 plus hours a week. I met a guy a couple of years ago. He made his money through various different businesses, and I think he works 10 till 2, 3 days a week or 4 days a week. And outside of that, he just literally, his phone's off. He doesn't do anything, but he works in those little windows and he does stuff and everything else. And I thought, oh, what a position to be in that is, that you can still do a bit, still be active, but
what
be able
you
to
do
be.
at the time. So what will you do instead? Would you not know that yet?
I don't know. I quite like, but the part of business I've always really enjoyed is the problem solving aspect of it, which is why, like in Landlords Letting and 3A, I tend to be the one that sorts of the court stuff or deals with the more technical side of stuff, branding, setting things up, putting processes and systems in place, like the software project that I've been working on that we use in our offices, in both businesses. I like that sort of stuff. I wouldn't mind it being like sort of somebody go into businesses that are struggling or businesses that got problems and maybe go in and just like not a business angel, but just go in and just solve problems and try and improve things and do it on more of a hobby basis rather than a job, because that's the bit because you're not working then, here you're doing something, it's a hobby rather than
it kind of like what we're doing now, right? Doing the podcast is because it's great and I love doing it, and absolutely there's a level which do it once you're doing stuff because you love it rather than because you have to. It does change it for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I just like that. That's where I'd like to be. The difficulty we've got in both businesses, we're so like whenever you're looking at a business, you always do a SWOT analysis, and you always got an eye on all the threats. They're the ones that can literally close your business overnight. And like problem we've got in this industry is the big threat that we've got in that box. You got the government, the legislation. It's a massive problem, and they change stuff so frequently, and they can put massive problems in your way. Like I said about the Section 21, if the Welsh government turned around and said, right, we're going to abolish Section 21s, we go from 700 properties to about 150, I'd say. I generally think we'd lose that many. And if they were being sold to other investors, I bet my bottom dollar that there'd be big companies coming in, big insurance, big.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it? Because that is the way that, you know, like, I mean, I've got 15 properties and all my groups are building. It's like you have to be, I mean, I'm small in the sense of a business, but in the sense of landlords, most landlords, originally it's one or two. You probably know the stats better than I do, but most people are like kind of accidental, have one or two. You know, even for financing, I'm considered a big landlord. Like the Mortgage Works won't touch me because I'm not, you know, 65% leveraged and stuff. But it's kind of forcing the whole industry towards big business, which is a bit ironic when it's one of the things that anyone in the past could kind of, you know, get into and have a level to which they were on the property market and up leveling and helping people who didn't. Because a lot of my tenants, this is another thing that's not talked about, they don't want to own their own house. And we don't talk about that either. There are people.
What about the people who come in short term?
Who own their own house?
People who come into the area short term to work on a short term contract. People, doctors, doctors, nurses, people like that. Like since Brexit, we've had a massive influx of people from outside of the EU. So obviously before, when we were part of the European Union, we had to look for people from within the EU first, and we could only take a small quota from outside. It's ironic because if you're any of those people who voted for Brexit because you didn't like immigration, you know, you dropped a bit of a bollock here, because literally the amount of Indian doctors and nurses come over, Nigerian students, and there's just a huge influx of people to come to South Wales at the moment. And we just, if we were living in a normal market, I don't think we could deal with the influx. But in this unprecedented times, with a massive shortage of properties as well on top, we've probably got if we kept a list, I have a guess about 100 people working the NHS here from overseas that can't find a home at the moment, and they're really struggling. So those people are always going to want to rent, because they're going to have to rent for 2 or 3 years until they can build up a credit history and everything else, and then they'd be fortunate to be able to buy if they, you know, do all the right things in that period and save money and all the rest of it. So there's always a market for private rental sector. You look around Europe, and there's far higher levels of rental. The high people who rent in those countries rather than UK. And Conservatives twice now have driven home ownership, haven't they, when they've been in power? Margaret Thatcher did it, you know, with the right to buy and everything else. It's like if they want everyone to own their own properties, it's in a utopian world, everyone would have their own property. Everyone would get a little job when they leave school, and within a couple of years have a deposit to buy their own house, and you know, move in with their loved one and have 2.4 children and
live happily ever after.
Yeah. So in a utopian world, that's the way it works. But you know, wages are not keeping up with house prices. So the bank just start increasing the multiplication of your annual income that you can use to buy a house.
And the term of the mortgage. You know, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years.
They have father and son mortgages out in Germany.
Yeah.
So, you know, people live differently in different parts of Europe, don't they? But
in Japan, they've got that as well. And I think there are 50-year mortgages and generational mortgages and things. Howard was talking about it in his property.
If we looked at those sort of products or solutions to the problem we've got in home ownership in UK, then how much further could this property price increase continue to go? Because if you start talking that, because it was 4 times your annual salary, then it went up to 7, but I think they're talking about abolishing any limit at all on it. I think one of the landlords I do a fair bit with mentioned it to me the other day. It was just a flippant conversation we were having. We just threw it in there. I haven't looked at what if it has happened or if it is happening. But we're edging back towards the self-cert days, aren't we, Alex? And
but that's never going to happen again, Di. Never again will this be allowed to happen. And here we are, 10 years on.
And anyone bouncing around in the late 90s, early 90s in property will all love the self-certs. Great days. Great days they were.
Oh,
Can I borrow this much money?
I wonder as well whether some of the people that are selling the property dream are still living in the early 20s, where it was like, you know, property prices just kept going up almost overnight, and you could get 95% mortgage, or I mean,
120.
it went even 120, didn't it? So and then the negative equity was ridiculous. I mean, it is kind of
Yeah. Well, you had Northern Rock, you could get 120% mortgage.
Yeah.
For
God
20% more than the house, you know?
Yeah. Which, if
Where
you were
did they go?
smart, if you were smart and you took the 20% and went and bought another house, you'd be laughing. But most people weren't. They'd buy the house, buy a car, go on holiday, give some money to anyone because they were like, woohoo, we're rich. And yeah. And then blame Northern Rock for it going wrong later.
Yeah. But Northern Rock, where did they go? Oh yeah, they went pop, didn't they? But it's that. But going back to the original question, really, where it's so difficult to even think a year or two in advance, because the changes that we've gone through over the last 10 years, we even think, right, this is what we're going to be doing, this is going to be the size of the business, and you can't. I always used to make fairly long-term plans, well, sort of at least medium-term plans for Landlords Letting. We've monitored the income that we make, and much like insurance businesses, you can draw pretty much a straight line through our growth over the 20 years. And the problem, like the pandemic, is they haven't really flattened the curve too much, but it has had a little bit of a detrimental effect. We're fortunate because we seem to have always made the right decisions at the right time. We opened this estate agent just when we needed it, because if we hadn't have done it, I think we would have hemorrhaged a lot more properties. But because people have come through the estate agents and had a good level of service when buying through them, they've automatically gone, well, they were good then, we'll use them there. But also, I'm speaking to a lot more landlords now who are phoning up, asking about the properties we've got for sale. But it also then, because we're always honest with people, and sometimes a bit too brutally honest with people about properties, and sometimes it's like they don't end up buying something because you've highlighted something that doesn't quite fit their needs.
But then in the long run, they'll always come back to you.
When they go and look at properties with other estate agents, they're sending me links to critique the other properties. Eventually, when they do buy, where does it come? Straight back into Landlords Letting. So, whereas I generally thought we were going to start dipping for the first time in our history over the last year or so, especially the last 2 years. But instead, because we've now got this new business feeding in landlords to us all the time, we're scooping up landlords we wouldn't normally have had, and we've continued the growth, and so but I didn't think that was going to happen. You keep making these decisions based on the information in front of you, but you don't sometimes appreciate how, in hindsight, how brilliant they were at the time.
And you realise, oh, that was lucky we did it that way.
It's like forgetting the fact that it wasn't luck. You actually knew you needed to do it at the time. But then it's like when I sold my estate agents in 2007. And then that's what the reason I did is because I could see it falling apart, because the investors start drying up and people couldn't get the finance. Straight away, I got out of it. I did a deal with another company locally where we had the lettings. They bought my office and a couple of others, and they've done it on the basis of they were going to open up like 26 offices all across South Wales. So we were going to own the lettings part, a completely independent limited company. So the deal I did with them was fantastic. They basically covered all our overheads, advertising, everything. All we had to give them was 20% of our gross commission. But bear in mind, we had about 30, 40 houses at the time. We were giving them sod all for 4 offices: Talbot Green, Tonopandi, Canton and Neath, which is why we got properties all across South Wales. And if they'd managed to keep on going, God knows how many, if we'd had 20 odd offices running, God knows how much we would have been, many properties we'd be looking after now. But obviously they tried building up this estate agency brand literally at the worst possible time ever. So after about 2 years, they wanted to get out. And that's when we jumped ship then and opened on our own, under our own branding, down here in Talbot Green. Because to be honest, I never wanted to go back into estates. I was there for the good times, because we were buying properties through the estate agent, and selling properties through the estate agent for our clients. We were then managing the refurbishment project, and then they were coming back to us for the rental. So we were getting the commission for the sale, commission on profit off the
Still
refurb,
worked. Yeah.
and then you're making your commission off the sort of ongoing management of it. And actually, one particular landlord, we just sold 6 of her houses, who she bought through us in the first place. We'd done the refurbishment and then managed them for what's been 12 years, and now we just sold them again. So you've actually had 4 or 5.
That's massive, isn't it? And people, you know, when I've got a group, when they come through Money Mastermind, they come into Mission Mastermind, they work on their businesses, and I am forever saying, who do you already know? That is, you know, it's your friends, your family, your neighbors, because they're going, oh no, I need to go and get clients somewhere else. I'm like, they're already on your doorstep. And that is such a good example of that. Like, you stayed with the people who were already with you. You stuck with them. You stayed in the long run. And then look at all those commissions over the years. And you didn't have to go and find a new client. You didn't have to do any big sales and marketing campaign. You took care of the people you already knew. And you got paid.
Did what they wanted you to do.
Yeah.
But this business it's incredibly simple when you break it down. You got to find something that people want.
Yeah.
And provide it to them at a cost that they can afford to pay. That's all it is. Whatever it is, that's all you need to do. And like back to Landlords Letting, we offer a number of service levels. So we got 2%, 5%, 8%, and 10%. Yeah. And it's a case of, well, the more you want us to do, the more it's going to cost.
Yeah.
And that gives people an option, because some people say, I like organising my own maintenance. I got plumber, I've got this, I've got that. That's fine. Well, it's 8% then, but you get all the maintenance calls. And we're only in the background then monitoring it, making sure that they are being done, and the tenants know that if there's repairs not being done, they contact us. Because whilst they can look after the maintenance, they have got to have appointed people doing it. Because under Rent Smart Wales, you can do like one thing. There's like a list of things. You can't collect the rent. That's the one thing you can't do. But you can do inspections, or you can't be the main point of contact. Are the 2 main things you can't do. But you're allowed to do 1 or 2 things yourself. So it's not a case of you can't be involved at all. And that's how the act was written. So you can be hands-on, but you can only do certain things, or one of the things on there. So we can then provide services where if they want to take a bit of the headache, you know, we can lower our fee. But if you want us to do everything, it's 10%, not 8%. No, with the higher value stuff, like we got some properties that are 1,500, 2,000 pound a month, things like that. You can lower the fees then, because we don't need 250 quid to look after a house. You know, it doesn't take that much. It does need to be a bit higher than the other ones, because they're bigger, they take more time. Because, you know, everything's just more of a problem, isn't it? The inspections take longer.
Higher turnover on the higher rents. Do people use the higher ones as more of a like stopgap between buying, or do you have long-term tenants?
No, long-term there as well. Very long-term. I think once you're above a 1 or 2 bed house, once you're above those and you're into 3s, then you're starting to get into, I'd probably say the average on a 3-bed house with us is probably around 6-7 years. Yeah. Average. Well, if you think of all yours, how often do you come to us to find tenants? Because you find somebody long-term at the start. Yeah. You know, they're there forever then, aren't they? So generally the 3 beds, 4 beds, 5 beds, they're long-term tenants. Yeah. It's the 1 beds and the 2 beds that we struggle with. Yeah. We still try. We're about 1.5 years, 2 years on average, something like that, I'd say.
Well, my HMO, I've got people, you know, HMOs, house of multiple occupancy, you know, mine's 8 bed. And, you know, I thought people are going to stay 6 months, a year, maybe 2 years max. I've got people that live there I've got one guy's just handed his notice 5 years. You know, one guy that lived there for a few years, thought he'd moved back home. I can't remember where in England, Reading, I think. Went home, thought, oh, it sucks. I miss what. Came back. Still there, you'll probably live there forever. So even in HMOs now, people are staying.
But you look at Owens. Some of his tenants he's got in there are lifers, aren't they? They're going to, God willing, they'll stay there for a very long time, you know? Well, so there are people, sometimes those, because they haven't, I know it sounds terrible, but people who want a small little place to live, cheap place, small little house, a small little flat, they're just not existent. There's just not many out there. So when they do find something that's nice and
they're not going anywhere,
is in good order and well maintained, you know, like I don't think my mother-in-law will ever move from Owens.
Yes, I forgot it's your mother-in-law living in the one.
Yeah, I don't think she'll ever move. My brother-in-law's in the other one.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe I might move in there one day, Alex, if my wife kicks me out.
He's made it. It's like a proper community there now, because
they got a little table out the back,
before, you know, it was a bit, you know, the bathrooms weren't very nice and it wasn't really looked after. And because he's bought next door and there's like a courtyard in the villas. But you know, it's nice now, isn't it? And everyone cares and everyone looks out, because you know Stephanie passed away.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, and everyone was genuinely upset. And
well, we were too. You know, we were too. Yeah. But it's you know, like when I first mentioned that property to you and O's, I said like when it first come to us under management, classic example, just chuck any old crap in it. If they pay some rent, great. They're charging like 200 quid and stuff like that a room. I was like, if you get these decent,
I remember you talking to me about it years ago, saying that you'd taken it over and you were upgrading it. And
so by the time we'd come to O's, most of them were up around the 300 mark, weren't they? 300, 305.
It was a bloody cracking property as it was, and then you know, obviously he's
now you're into the fours, 400s, 500s now, you know, and you get far better quality people in it, far few problems. So it's been a battle with it. Well, it hasn't been great to try and get the standard of tenants up, but once you start producing the flats that are there now, or the little, you know, bed sits that's there now, you attract really good quality people, you know, that you'd happily have as a neighbour, wouldn't you? So if you do things right, people will pay the money for it. Again, like I just mentioned, it's simple, isn't it? Give somebody a nice property. That's what people need. Nice little homes like that are stable and well looked after. You provide that to people, and they can afford to pay 400 to 500 quid a month for a one bed. Because if they're going to get a 2-bed house, it's 750, 800. You know,
the bills, the council tax, everything's much higher. I mean, the council tax on that unit, I mean, that's a bit nuts because they're getting charged. Those flats, the council tax is 130 quid a month. It's the lowest band, but it's like it's a bed sit. There almost should be another.
Well, they get in. The council are getting, you know, the best part of £1,000 a month there.
For that building.
Near enough. It's just scandalous. I know on the council tax thing, you know, you look, how can it be right that you got somebody in one of those units down there paying 130 and somebody in Kensington 1.7 million, £8 million flat paying like only 20 quid more a month. So a lot of people in the Rhondda are paying more in council tax than the vast majority of people in London. It's just as
a percentage of the rent, it's huge, right? Because I think the lowest in Rhondda is 130, is it?
Yeah,
something
going
like
up to about 240, 260. The highest, maybe.
So
you compare that.
Will you ever go into politics, changing things? Because I got asked this a lot, right? I'm like, you know, you say about all this stuff, and I'm also, just to be clear, I'm asking you this question. I'm kind of being a bit teasy because I'm like, I don't want to fucking deal with it, because dealing with bureaucracy and councils and politics, because you know, my dad has even said to me several times, well, why don't you go into politics and change it? I'm like, oh my god, I can't imagine anything worse. But at the same time, if people like us don't.
I've had many discussions about this, down the local pub, you know, having a few pints, and I'm a firm believer that if we wanted true democracy in this country, and we wanted a democracy that truly worked for us all, we'd have independent people being voted in every constituency. Not Labour, not Conservative. I mean, independent people. They're not coming with any pre-programmed ideology or concept of what they think's right or wrong. Because what is the point in voting in a Conservative MP in the Rhondda, who then, when he goes to Westminster to vote on matters that are important for that constituency, he's going to vote on the basis of what the party whip's telling him to vote. So all you're getting is a dominant party that then, in all fairness, it does mean they can get shit done. So if you've got a dominant party, they can vote through things and they can make a difference. So there's a benefit to it in that sense. But also, what would be far beneficial if you had, how many, I don't know, is it 400, 500 MPs, whatever there is, maybe more than that, is there? However many of them there are. If you can imagine they were all independent, and each of those could bring a motion forward in Parliament that gets debated by, and everyone puts in their 2 pence worth, and then they have a vote, that person is going to be voting what's best for his constituency because he lives there. He actually lives there. He's from the Rhondda. He's voting on behalf of the Rhondda. Pontypridd the same, Westminster the same, Newcastle, all these people actually from there. You know, I want to hear somebody with a Geordie accent standing in there. I want to hear somebody with a Yorkshire accent. I want to hear somebody from Bristol. You know, you want to hear those accents, those different accents, all people from those areas putting together what's right for their individual area. Then what will happen? Let's say I go there and say, right, I want to sort out the council tax. It's unfair. Our people up there are paying a lot more than people in London. So everyone in London, your council tax is going up a lot, and everyone else, your council tax is going to come down a bit. And if I put that motion forward now, it wouldn't get anywhere near through the House of Parliament. However, if I put it through with independents from all over the country, so everyone all over the country is going to benefit, but London's going to suffer. Well, this is sometimes when you look at what's right or just, this is the type of thing that should happen. But the trouble is, the politics are so London-centric, and they make decisions, quite often make decisions that are based on what's best for London, and they just, the rest of the country...
They're not applicable either which way. Like, stuff that's applicable in Wales isn't applicable London, and vice versa. Like, it just doesn't... And even within Wales, stuff that's applicable in the Rhondda isn't applicable in West Wales with the holiday homes.
Yes. Or Cardiff, or Cardiff Bay, or in the farming communities in mid Wales, you know. So all of those people would have a voice, and it'd be great if, you know, when you're having a minister for education, he's been a teacher and a headmaster for 30 years before he gets that privilege. If you're the head of health,
don't get me started on the health secretary.
Well, yeah, health secretary. You know, if you're going to be the health secretary, you have to wipe somebody's ass in hospital once at least.
Or, you know,
something. So you get people who actually you can't do these jobs because you're a politician. You should be doing these jobs because you've been voted to do it by your peers because you're well regarded, and you should only be doing it for, as say, if you're coming towards retirement, you get to 55, right? You were approaching 55 now. He's on his way out now. He's getting to 65, or whether he wants to do it to 70 or whatever. But they should do it for the last 10, 15 years of their career when they've already been in the coalface in that particular subject. They've been there on the ground floor. They're making decisions based on reality, not politicians who want to do the right thing to stay popular. So and we should have people from the Christian background, Muslim background. We should even have a couple of people on benefits in there. Because we've got people on benefits, they need a voice. So people go, oh, well, they're on benefits because they're thick, or they're on benefits because of this, that, and the other. They can be on benefits for a multitude of reasons. It could be somebody who's just got a disability and can't work for whatever reason. There might be a way that they can go and attend a few meetings in Cardiff and put their voice forward and have a vote to represent that echelon of society. So I think if we went down that route and you're having proper independence and everything else, and you look at some of the MPs around you that we've got and the AMs, the vast majority of them are not from that area. And, you know, they might have an office here, but some of them have been put there by Labour. Right, you go and have that one, or you were quite good, we like you, your face fits our party, you can have that one, you can have that one. So that's not a fair representation of the people, is it? Like when we had a vote in the Welsh Assembly, and this is one that really gripped my shit, I gotta be honest. All the mud from Hinckley Power Station. That was all dumped in the Cardiff flats. So the toxic waste from something they were building in England, I'll just dump it over the other side of the water. Why didn't they dump it on their side of the water? Why Welsh side? And the Welsh Assembly government voted to allow it to happen. Do you know why? Because clearly some of them don't fucking live here. And money.
And that,
And they don't live here. They've got no history to Wales, you know, and some of them are great mind. Like Mick Anthony, he's the AM for where I actually live, and he does an awful lot in the community. There's stuff about new homes being built, or he gets behind lots of stuff, even like a rugby pitch for a local club or whatever. You see him doing an awful lot of good causes. I've met him personally. He's a really nice guy. I think he comes from a legal background, solicitor or something like that in a past life. But he's really nice guy. And, even though he's not originally from this area, he does champion.
He lives here now, and it's his, yeah. Well, it's a bit like me, right? I'm not originally from Wales, but actually, if Wales and England are playing in the rugby, technically I'm English, I'll actually support Wales. I freaking love Wales. Like, I love being here, So it's...
Yeah. Yeah, but,
the point is he cares, doesn't he? It's the point about having people that care and that are passionate, that have lived outside of politics to then...
Yeah, and they're then going to, especially from those particular profession ones, like the health secretary, the education secretary, those people should come from that background. I don't see why on earth it's sensible to do it any other way. I can't think of any reason why it's better not to do it that way. I just can't. Other than because it's a popularity contest, and you've got somebody who's from that background, and has got some sort of knowledge in it, and because it's a popularity contest, what they want to do is make sure they don't say the wrong thing. Because, like, if I was standing there as, say, I'm the for the property industry, what they call a housing secretary or whatever, I'm going to say what I believe, as I have done today. I'm not going to mind my P's and Q's, so I don't want to piss somebody off. And politicians are so scared of doing that. What I want a politician to do is go, this is what I want to happen on this subject. I'm on this side of the fence. On this subject,
regardless of party and all the rest of it.
But they just go, oh yeah, but the thing is, we got to look into this, and they'd be so non-committal about even the simplest of questions for fear of being seen. If it's Brexit, or if it's immigration, if it's education, or whatever it is, there's like this wishy-washy sort of non-committal answers all the time. I want to hear what somebody really thinks. And I think if you had a load of independent people, and it's not about popularity, because that guy's popular in his area, and if he's standing up and going, well, this affects the people in my area, this is the problem we've got, all those people in the area are going to be championing him. But you might have another area go, oh, that guy's a dickhead, or going on about all that crap. Nobody cares about that. But that's fine. They're not voting him in. It's these people that are voting him in, and that's what they want to hear him say. But if you're part of the Labour or Conservative Party, it just seems that they've got a party line, and this is what your stance is on this. This is what your stance is on that. In a way to try and win popularity across the UK. And then it just happens to be they win certain seats in certain areas because of it. So in short, would I get involved in politics? Not in the way it is now, because I don't think, I'm a bit of an anarchist at heart anyway, so I don't like following the herd and this is what you've got to say, this is what you've got to think. I very much like doing my own thing. If I felt I could truly be given a free rein to make a difference, I'd love to get my hands into the property industry in Wales. And from the experience I've had, and from all the people I know, and the team you could put together, I'm sure we could solve a huge amount of the problems that we've got quite quickly. But you'd have to be given the power to do that, And I don't think you'd ever truly have that, unless you're a dictator in this country. I don't think you'd ever get there.
The game, though, I think, and I'm realising the time, we need to wrap up. I tell you what I would like to do. I'd like to carry on this conversation another day, and there's other people that I've got in mind, because I think that the thing for me that has continually bugged me in this, being in this industry, is that if we don't change it, no one will. Because I'm like you, right? I'm like, I don't want to be in politics. I don't want to toe a party line. There's nuances in every area until we have, autonomy to do the right thing for the housing market in the valleys, in West Wales. And even within those, relative to, is it holiday let? Is it actually a second home that's empty all the time? And yeah, I don't know. It's one of those, you've got
the holiday. You think about it, what's crazy is they can see there's a problem, and it's the same problem. Too many holiday homes in coastal towns. too many student houses in this area, Treforest, let's say, in Pontypridd. So to solve the Treforest problem, they say, right, you've got to have a license now, and they'll only allow new licenses if there's no density of those particular properties in that area.
Yeah.
Great solution to a problem.
Yeah.
Bit late, because they're already swamped with them.
Yeah, you know, horses bolted, shut the barn door, but better late than never. Go and catch the horse, bring it back, don't let it happen again.
Yeah, but they could have used that exact same solution for the holiday lets.
Yeah.
You know, say, right, you can only have so many people can have them as a second home where they use as a resident. Only so many of them can have them as holiday lets. Because you've got to have holiday lets in these places. You
because
know,
actually, that's what brings the money into the areas which have lost all their industries.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's just use, that's a great solution for that before it gets out of hand. But they just stick 4% stamp duty, and people who've got plenty of money, with 4% of them, they don't care.
Pay it, yeah.
They just pay it. So you're attacking wealthy people who can afford to buy second homes as a second home for them to use, and you think by putting 4% on is going to prevent it. Licensing would have worked there. You know, this thing that you use for student areas a bit too late, which eventually might start coming to fruition and it'll work. Because you go around Treforest and some of the streets, and they're dreadful. But people are starting to move back in. Their families start to move into different areas. It's starting to shrink a bit. Perfect thing for students is the nice blocks of flats close to the university. They're all in one place. You can manage everything.
Again, it's a bit like the social housing. Spread it around. Don't have a whole street of students. It's exactly the same thing, isn't it? If you have a whole street of students that have all only just left home and don't know how to put the rubbish out, you're going to have a shit show. If you have a student house in between Mr. and Mrs. Jones who put the rubbish out, the students can look when the rubbish goes out.
That's how it's done.
That's how it's done. We'll put the rubbish out. It's exactly the same. As soon as you put one group of people in a space, nothing available.
But they know that works. Well, use it. Use it. This is frustrating. And if, some experiments have failed drastically. The one thing I will say, they got spot on registering of bonds. Have bonds going into a third party, because that takes away any of the problems. Independent. I thought that was I was 100% behind that. And I thought it was a great idea from the off, really. But other than that, I find it difficult to understand anything they've done is right, or has had any benefit, or made any beneficial change to the industry on behalf of tenants specifically. I don't think any of it has, pretty much, you know.
I feel a call to action for us, Di, to look at how we can actually change the system. I fear that it's a bigger thing than I know what I'm saying, and I might regret saying this, especially on a podcast that's been recorded. But what I am going to do, there's a few, I've got a couple of clients who are part of associations and stuff. I think probably you and I
just open dialogue. Sometimes if they think about making decisions, just speak to a few people who, been in the game and been in the cold face.
Maybe,
not just
maybe we
agents.
need to go and speak to some people and do some stuff.
Because they just need to realize, just look around them. And I know a post I wrote on Facebook. I know I mentioned Mick Anthony earlier. I know he took that all the way to the Welsh Assembly government, because I was highlighting the sheer lack of properties in the area and the carnage it was causing. And I know that went down there. So they're bound to be able to see it. They can't not see it unless they're just literally standing in a corner with their eyes shut. They must be seeing it. And it's just whether they're attributing, the cause and effect. Which effect has come from which cause, and start piecing it together. And I think maybe if somebody just sat down and looked at it all, well, maybe we need to rewind this a little bit. Maybe rewind that a little bit, and start, because they need the private rental sector. And if they encourage more landlords to come into the private rental sector, do you know what happened? The rents will start coming back down again, because all of a sudden people will have to compete for properties. And do you know, if the market is a bit more buoyant, the other thing, the housing stock improves, because landlords got to do a bit more in between tenancies to attract the best tenants. Now I could have a soggy shoebox out the back of the garden here, I'd probably get £100 a month for it, and So the markets are a wonderful thing, and if you allow the markets to control prices rather than external influence, you can bring about equilibrium through just allowing more stock to come in, Or if they don't want more landlords, these people who are coming over from India to start working in the NHS, give them bloody mortgages. Let them go and buy a house.
Yeah.
You don't need a deposit. You come in to work in the NHS. You don't need a deposit. We'll give you we guarantee the loans with the banks.
Yeah.
These are hard-working, really nice people. Why can't they just come up here and buy? That'll take a huge burden off the rental market, because all of a sudden we'd have another influx of 30, 40 houses to go back on the market because they've all been able to buy their own properties rather than rent. They're only renting because the banks won't lend to them. I'd have a guess, unless they're coming over for a trial period, see how it is, and after 6, 12 months, then maybe just make a decision to stay here. I don't know, but they might be looking long term and setting roots here. I haven't spoken to them about it because it's irrelevant, but be interesting to know how many of them would buy instead of rent if they had that option.
Oh, Di, we could sit here all day, couldn't we?
Well, so go on to mortgages,
I'm gonna get Sarah to book you in again soon.
Tenants if tenants have been in a house 10 years and they've been paying 550 quid a month rent, and the mortgage, 100% mortgage on that would be 400, give them the bloody 100% mortgage. They just proved that they could do it for 10 years.
Yeah.
Give them the mortgage.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying just give anybody 100% mortgage, but if you want to push home ownership,
if you can,
there we are, problem solved.
And if the government wants to back something, back that, because actually you're guaranteeing it against property. The person's lived in the house already for 10 years, so they really want to stay. So the risk
they're happy. Yeah, they're happy. They're settled there. They enjoy that house. They're probably families local. A lot of these tenants in the housing up say they get it. They want to stay there forever. Well, own it. You can stay as long as you want, then till you sell it. This thing that instead they put it into, it always goes into like big business thing. Like you've got they fund like these Help to Buy, but it's with the national house, like one of the national house builders. Well, these house builders then, because they get in the 15% from the government, they're inflating the prices of those properties are going to sell for. Because the mortgages are guaranteed, surveyors just go in and go like that. There was 2-bedroom houses sold in Langley Hall for 185,000. They should have been 160 tops, 170 absolute tops at that point in time. But now they're being sold for 210, 215, because they started off at that price that many years ago, so they must have gone up like everything else.
Yeah,
I wouldn't go anywhere near one of those for anything more than 180.
Like when clients say to me, "Oh, what do you think of this?" Or as soon as someone says off plan, I've got a discount. I'm like, you haven't got a fucking discount. They've inflated the price and then put it at what it should be and made it look like there's a discount, but there isn't a discount. You're just getting it for the price that it is. So it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And that's if the developer doesn't go bust during the process and you lose your deposit. So
yeah, it is. And sometimes you look at what's going on from the outside and you go, clearly they're taking the piss. Clearly. And you just go, why is it? It's like all these bloody electrical chargers now. My wife just bought an electric car because we're trying to save the planet,
Oh, Lord, we could talk for 2 hours on that, couldn't we? That alone, that one thing, we could talk about that for 2 hours.
Genuinely, mind, I can't wait to get an electric car myself. Not anything to do with the environment and all the rest of it. They're just so much better than bloody petrol and diesel. They just everything about this car is I just love it a bit. Like, it's not me that's driving, it's the wife, but every time I get in there and I go into one of the works cars, I just want one of these cars who just sit in and just goes, and start it up and all the rest of it. I think they're phenomenal anyway. Whether it's saving the planet or not is a different argument, because the amount of energy that goes into making them is ridiculous, but that's a different argument. But the wall chargers. So I'm obviously an electrical engineer, my past life. I can fit a wall charger to my property, no drama. Legally, I can't because I haven't got this Part P thing. So I've got my cousin sign it off for me. I bought that wall charger for like 500 quid, 495 quid or whatever it was. And then the other bits and pieces needed to fit it. If I wanted, there's a government grant you can get. they'll pay, I think it's 350 quid towards you having a wall charger. But to get them from the companies supplying fit, they're like 900 quid, 850, 900 quid. But I just had mine for a little bit over 500.
Yeah. So the markup just on the materials.
Yeah. So I'm paying somebody else to do it. Why couldn't I have the 350 quid and get mine for 150?
And I bet fitted there's something like £2,000 or something ridiculous.
No, they're actually they're about 850 fitted. But I did it for the best part of 500 quid to fit mine. But I bought it all direct.
Then people go, having solar panels or electric cars or heat pumps is not economically viable. And that's why. It's not because they're expensive, it's because of markups.
Yeah, because the people who are coming into this game, you've got middlemen. We don't need middlemen doing this sort of thing. It should be like, are you getting a wall charger? Yes. Use your 350 quid. Oh, show us the receipt that you bought. Use your 350 quid. Why do they need companies in the middle who are inflating their prices because they know they're getting 350 quid of it free? So, I did. And if they did the same with all the Green Deal stuff, when they fit in boilers and all those sorts of things, the actual cost of what you're getting in comparison to what the cost of what the government are paying in comparison to what the actual end product is, there's a huge amount of money is disappearing in the middle here. Just strip away the red tape and the bureaucracy. Get people to go out, free market, buy the stuff from wherever they want. Yes, the stuff that they fit has got to be certain standards. It's got to come from certain suppliers, maybe. Control a little bit of it, but not control the whole thing and give it to one guy who does 10,000 of them and then pockets £1,000 or £2,000 every time.
Fine.
Yeah, that's all money. They're going to put another load of solar panels up on other people's homes. It's just you see it all the time. £3,000 for a new boiler. No, it's 1,800 quid supplied and fitted. It's not £3,000. There's £3,000 through the Nest scheme. And then the cheeky sods trying to charge you extra because they're trying to not paying anything extra, mate. We know we already lumped up a big chunk on top of that. Just because the landlord's having it for nothing, and you want to say, put an extra 150 quid on because we had to move the boiler a bit further than we thought. Your problem, mate. You did the survey. It's
mad, isn't it? It comes back to, if there's condensation in the room, open the window. Strip out the middlemen. It's just like, actually, so much stuff is simple, and we as human beings seem to add in layers of health and safety and bureaucracy, and it must be this, and you have to have that, and blah, blah, blah. And before you know it, we're like, what is going on? The world is mad.
And it's costing all of us all the time. I know you've got to have a few rules and a bit of guidance, and there's elements of control. You can't have full-blown anarchy. I appreciate that. But there's so many people now in jobs creating rules, and they're creating rules to justify their jobs. Well, if their jobs weren't there, they wouldn't be producing more rules. Come in, set the rules, and bugger off. Because if you leave them in this role too long, they keep on coming up with more stuff to justify their job. And that's what happens with stuff like Rent Smart Wales. Rent Smart Wales, great idea, great concept. But because the people are still there, involved in it, they got to keep on coming up with new rules to show that they're doing something. But no, you put the rules in place.
It's in place.
Go away now. Come back if you need to change something. Maybe review it every 5 years. You don't need somebody employed there permanently coming up with more crap all the time. And the ironic thing about it is you can't even phone Rent Smart Wales at the moment. If you're locked out of an account, there's a notice on their website saying we are not accepting any calls at the moment due to staffing issues. And then they'll send you a letter saying they're going to fine you. It's like, well, I can't log into my account. The platform in the background is crap. The login system's crap. There's loads of problems with it. Loads and loads. And they're all fixable. All really fixable. I don't know why you need to phone Rent Smart Wales anyway. All you need to do is answer bloody emails in a timely fashion. How many people do you need for that, But
we've got a long journey ahead of us, Di, to simplify the world.
That's I'd love to get my teeth into it, but I just don't. I think if we look how much the bureaucracy we find ourselves tied up in. Can you imagine trying to change something in a law or in an act or something. Imagine the level of crap we've got to
Yeah,
go
but
through.
Di, you've just told me that in the next 10 years you want to step away. So I'm like, Di's going to be free, and I could create some time, and we can go and
Maybe.
create carnage somewhere.
Just have a bash.
Just
See what
for
we can
fun,
do.
because we've got nothing else to do.
Yeah, I suppose it's because I suppose it wouldn't matter if you're not changing anything if you're just doing it for fun, for fits and giggles.
Yeah, maybe that's the context we need to go at it. As like,
Yeah,
wouldn't it be fun if? Let's give it a go, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter.
yeah. Maybe be a bit shit though, wouldn't it? We've gone through all this crap, and then as we're taking a step back, we make changes to make everyone's life easier, and I'm not benefiting from it anymore. It's a bit of a selfless act. I don't think that's the right attitude of an estate agent and a letting agent, to be so selfless. I don't think that's right.
Brilliant. And on that selfless note, I feel like we need to wrap up. I've got a couple of people who are going to be annoyed for me for being late for a meeting. Sorry, Vicky and Kevin, I'll say it publicly.
12.
We will do it again.
We did say that once we get on our soapboxes, 3 hours won't be a problem.
We literally did, and we were not wrong. I'm gonna take us off live, but we will still be in a room together. So thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks ever so much, Di, for chatting. We'll definitely do this again, because I feel like there's a whole planet out there that needs changing, and I feel like we need to put our money where our mouth is on our proverbial soapboxes and start doing something about it. I don't know what it's going to look like, but it could be fun. Cheers, everybody.